There we
We're
go. Holy
live.
crap. Folks, welcome to Talking Crit. I am Eric Tenkar, your bartender in the OSR. With me, as always, is none other than Bad Mike, best known of North Texas RPG Con.
I'm actually wearing a shirt. I don't always wear a North Texas shirt. I
Well, I'm
just
about to say
happen
you
to be
don't
wearing one
normally
today.
wear a shirt, and that was going to
No,
get
I
me.
usually wear a shirt because they would be horrific otherwise. But
Yes,
no, I'm
yes.
And,
wearing a
and the
North
audience
Texas.
appreciates it, Mike.
with
Yeah, but
us,
I don't really like those guys.
with us is Brian Tidwell, CBCS. He's an RPG grader. We're going to be talking grading and slabbing. Um, it's been a very interesting. I haven't been following the conversation deeply online on Facebook, but man, the pieces that I've stumbled across have been very opinionated on all sides.
Very hot, and people are
There's a lot
really
of passion
salty.
in
And
our hobby, right? And we
Yeah,
we we appreciate the passion, and that passion is one of the reasons why I'm in the hobby myself.
and come at us, bros. If you guys want to come, no. A lot of the discussion came because my buddy Ingo Schurman, who comes to North Texas, you're going to find a lot of North Texas connections here. That's how I met Brian, was North Texas, and he spieled me pretty good on why I should start slabbing stuff that I find valuable, and I worked it over my mind, and I have a couple of reasons I do it, which I've explained before, but I'll explain again tonight. And Ingo thought that was a good idea too. Ingo and I both come from the hobby in the same direction. We're both dealer collectors. We're like Bill Meinhardt's a collector. Alex Kamer is a collector. These are guys that they're pure collectors. They don't sell things. They might trade stuff, but they're there to archive our hobby. Whereas when I first started doing this in 1994, 30 years ago, I came in and was like, hey, there's some idiots online spending that wants to buy a first edition player's handbook for $60, and I got 15 over here in a pile in my office. Yeah, I'll sell it for $60 each. Wait a second, they're paying more for a first print than a sixth print? Okay, I mean, so yeah, I come up from the angle that, hey, this stuff's great, but I'm probably going to end up passing away. I know it's sad, but I'm going to end up passing away someday, which means I leave it all to my wife, and she doesn't want to deal with it. And that's what happens in most of these cases. So we'll talk all about all that too. But first of all, let me just ask Brian. I'm just going to ask you, how did you get in with I don't know how much you can talk actually about CBCS. I know you're not officially a representative of them on the show. You're just kind of a guy that works there.
I do have official permission to be on the podcast from the company, so I can really answer any questions you want to the best of my ability. So
okay. So how long have you been working there? What have you actually, what have you been doing there?
And I've been there about 3 years. And my hobby experience from the comic book side is, been collecting since I was 12 years old, and I started pressing comics probably about 5 years ago. And part of the process in pressing a comic, and for those who don't know what pressing is, it's the process of cleaning and then applying heat and pressure to a book to remove minor defects like soiling, dirt, minor dents, bends, things like that. To get a better grade for the book. So part of the process in pressing those books was to grade the book before I pressed it, and then to grade the book after I pressed it to see what sort of improvement I got. And of course, I was grading my collection before that with a little bit less critical eye. But through all those years of pressing and repeatedly grading comics before and after pressing, I actually happened to meet the chief guy, the head cheese, at a comic book convention at a dinner afterwards for original comic book art collectors, and just randomly happened to sit next to him at dinner. We started talking, one thing led to another. He figured out I knew what I was talking about, and he invited me in to take a grading test, and sort of the rest is history. So again, I've worked there about 3 years, and I'm one of the vintage graders for comics. So if you send an FF1 or a Golden Age book, I would be one of the people who grade that. We do have a guy who's worked there a lot longer than me, who would grade like the mega keys, like the Action 1 comes in and that type of thing. He's the guy who would grade those, and then they would go to our finalizers. The guy who invited me to apply for the job, he's the guy who basically double checks our work and basically agrees or disagrees with our grade.
So do you ever get jaded? Like, there's another Fantastic Four 1 through 10 came through here today.
Yeah,
you know, are you just like, whoa, oh my God,
yeah,
Spider-Man,
the giant keys. The giant keys I still get excited about, but like, I used to love Hulk 181, but I've seen so many Hulk 181s now.
Well, look, he's fighting Wolverine again for the first time. Yawn.
Yeah. So I mean, we still get that little tingle of excitement because, oh, hey, it's a Hulk 181. But once you've created several hundred of them, it loses its luster a little bit. We did get a Marvel Comics one into the office the other day.
Oh, those are
which is
like
a giant key.
14 of those. There's like some single or double-digit number of those, right, in the world.
Well, I couldn't tell you exactly how many are in existence or have been graded, but it's a very, very rare book. It's the first Marvel comic. It's the first appearance of Namor in a comic book. It's the first Human Torch, the android Human Torch, not the FF Human Torch, and several other first appearances. So it's just a major, major, major key. So I was really excited to get that. And to be fair, I actually did read the Namor story out of the book while I was reading.
Don't tell me you flipped the pages. You flipped the pages of that book to read it? No, okay.
But how many times am I going to get a chance to read the original source material for something like that?
Sure.
So yeah, I definitely took a chance to read that. I think it's an 8-page story that's in there. That's the Namor book. And by the same token, Mike, when you submitted some of your more rare RPG items, I didn't read them cover to cover, but I definitely took some time to flip through them and look at the art and stuff like that.
I think they're pretty. The Avengers 4 I gave you, which is the first Silver Age Captain America. I don't believe I ever actually opened that book because I was too freaked out about to even. When I bought it, it went straight into a plastic container, and I gazed at it lovingly for years afterwards. I never actually opened it, and I think probably all the ones I gave you, I don't think any of those were actually in my collection being read. I think those are all when I bought them. They just kind of went into a box, and
Well, I'm sure your next question is going to be, how did CBCS end up grading RPG things, right?
Yeah, because CGC started. So let's go back a little bit in the history. So when did CGC start grading? Because they were the first, right? They started
around
grading
2000.
Yeah, but that's what I remember too. Right, but really, when I pretty much got out of comic shows, that's when they started doing. I still did some into the aughts a little bit, but they started grading comics, and then they also graded. After a while, they started grading cards were big too. Baseball cards were huge. Comics, and they've done that for many.
I don't want to
years.
advertise for them, but they grade basically everything. They have a coin division, a card division, a video game division. A comic book division,
right? It became a thing. So, and CBS does the same thing. But they started doing about a year or 2 years ago. They started doing RPGs, and I remember seeing the first ones, and I just thought that's okay. That's interesting. Why would you put your RPG in a slab? It doesn't make sense. But then the same reasons you put a comic in a slab, or why you put an RPG in a slab. And so I had years ago, I had an incident with CGC. I wanted to get some comics slabbed, and it's a long story. I won't go into it, but I was very disappointed with what happened because I had to freak out because the United States Postal Service misplaced my package for 30 days that I sent to them.
Always scary. Yeah,
that was insured, but not for quite what the comics were worth, because they were worth a lot. And it finally got there, and I was sort of my dying day when I got back wasn't the comic I sent either. Or one of them just didn't look right.
Didn't look like the same. Yeah.
No, but I don't know. But anyway, so I just I'm not going to do that. I can do it.
Yeah.
And so as time has gone on, and I'm older, and I just turned 60 this year, and my wife and I are downsizing, and we're trying to get rid of the clutter. And I have had several my very close friends pass away in the last few years, and two of them left massive collections, that their spouses, significant others didn't want to deal with. And I realized what a burden that puts on the survivors when you pass away. You have something like a collection; it could be anything. And your spouse, doesn't have the passion for it. And what happens to that collection? Well, it gets sold off very quickly, probably in a huge lot, and probably not for anywhere near what it's worth. And this is something you lovingly collected for years, hoping that maybe it could be sold after my death. And the truth of it is, they don't have nobody has time to deal with it. You could spend. Mike Carey, a good friend of mine, passed away several years ago. I had a gigantic collection. His mother is still selling it. It's been 5 years. I mean, they can't even be 30% of the way through it. So it's just a massive, massive undertaking. And I started thinking I need to find some way to get. So I had my comics were in a safe deposit box, my very valuable ones. And then I had another box at home where my somewhat valuable ones were. And then the rest were at the warehouse. I have probably, I don't know, I have a couple hundred long boxes. So I don't, whatever, how much that is, 300 comics along. I have a lot of comics, and comics are my first love. I started working comic shows in 1980, 81. So I was really into comics. And so I started putting my side. I said, look, these are worth a lot. These are whatever. My wife's like, yeah, whatever. Okay, they're worth a lot. I mean, I don't know. And I'm like, yeah, maybe I need to get these slab. And then when I talked to Brian this year at North Texas, and he brought some examples, and I thought they looked fantastic, the ones you brought. And I said, that's what I want to start doing, is start slabbing my games or my RPGs, my valuable ones. And that way, when something happens to me, my wife won't have to worry about judging condition or anything. She can just go, oh, yeah, he Warriors of Mars, here we go. It's a 6.5, yeah. And then 6.5, yeah. And so she can just slap it on eBay. She doesn't have to do any talking. She just put that on eBay, Warriors of Mars, 6.5, boom. And just write down the little information there. Or, here's Dragon Magazine number 2, which is a sweet 9.0, by the way. And she doesn't have to deal with any of the issues. My grandkids could do it. Anybody could do that. It's not hard to list something on eBay if you don't have to go into the particulars, right?
Right.
That's when it gets hard.
If you don't want to list it on eBay, there are other resources like Comic Link that you can just mail it.
Comic Link, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so anyway, I got interested in doing it. And then I talked to Brian, and one of the deciding factors was you're within driving distance. CBCS it has offices in Plano, which is not a very long drive from me, and that because I was very scared about mailing stuff, which is why I have not in the last 10 years.
And I can't advocate for the United States Postal Service. You just already told us one nightmare. But packages don't typically get lost anymore, so please don't be afraid to mail your packages.
That's true. They have tracked. This is 10 years ago. This is 10 years ago. Tracking is so much better now. You can track the hell out of stuff now, especially if you get signature. Yeah. Stuff like that.
So CGC started in 2000. CBCS started in 2013. So this is our 10th year in business. And we've traditionally just done comics. We got bought by Beckett about 7 years ago. Beckett is a well-known brand in the card grading world. So we've always done comics, and we wanted to start doing comic magazines, but we didn't have a big enough holder, the actual plastic slab. To hold a magazine. We had the expertise to grade a magazine, but we didn't have the slab to hold it. We launched that, I guess, probably 8 or 9 months ago now, the magazine grading. And of course, immediately, Brian, the old grognard RPG player and collector, the wheels start turning. And I think to myself, hey, you know what else fits in those slabs? RPG modules fit in those slabs.
Perfectly.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, I started talking to the business people at the office, and of course, their first question is, well, what does the market for this look like? I have no idea. I was able to point out some strong eBay results for some rares and super rares, right? And talk about the value of some of these things, and how many items, compared to comics, how many RPGs get sold a week on eBay? Well, less than 5%, right? And so they understood that this is never going to be a huge money-making proposition for them, right? But they recognized my passion for doing it, and I wanted to do it right. When I initially had the idea, I didn't know that CGC had graded a few RPGs already. So I thought, we'll be the first to the market. This will be a cool thing, blah, blah, blah. Started doing some research, found a few CGC slabs. They've really only done a handful. They haven't done a whole bunch. But we had some internal
real quick, Brian, I want to break in, and this is not something you can probably say, but I'll say it. I think CGC did a really terrible job the first ones they did too. But I've seen some of the early ones they did. They didn't really have a handle on what they were doing. But that's something I understand you can't say that, but I'm going to say it. I don't think they knew what they were doing when they first started doing it. But
yeah, we can talk about why I think that we do a better job specifically in the RPG space than CGC does. And the first of them, I would say, is that there's 2 other old grognards like me who are in the building who are pre-grading, as to say, taking your book, identifying what it is, verifying the authenticity, making sure the artist and writer credits are right in our database, and then grading the book before it goes to our finalizer, right? So we actually have real hobbyists who are passionate about this hobby and these collectibles grading the items. And we're not just saying, oh, we can do that because it's a pamphlet-sized book and we can give it a grade. We know how to do that.
And that's one of the main criticisms is that, well, you just got a bunch of comic guys trying to grade RPGs, and that's not the case, is it?
That's really not the case with us.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on at CGC. I suspect that it's just their comic guys doing it, and I base that on a couple of things. One is the way they do their label. For instance, I have Star Frontier's Bugs in the System on my desk right now. So if they grade that module, it would just say Star Frontiers module across the top in their big bold type. And then very, very tiny font, it would say Bugs in the System on the bottom left. Like we know as hobbyists that's not how it should be done, right? It's going to be identified in my collection as Star Frontiers Bugs in the System, and that's the title of the item.
For instance, this is something I have. It's identified as D&D, which it is, Palace of the Silver Princess B3, which is all the information you need right there. Boom. That's everything. Letter number, the D&D, not a D&D, and the fact that the title.
Why don't you hold that up for me again, actually, because that's actually the next thing I want to talk about. That one's in shrink, right?
This was actually a shrink one, yes.
Yeah. So if you can't probably see it on your the viewer probably can't see it, but at the very bottom of that label there is a grade for the shrink wrap.
That's true. Yeah, this is a B because there were little corner issues. Yeah. So it was a B, which I was happy with because.
So the other thing that we had to decide internally was, what are we going to do about shrink wrapped items? Because we had never graded anything in the Beckett world, cards or comics that were still in a bag.
The practice is always to take the plastic off.
Always to take it
comics
off. And there's a few reasons for that, right? Like in comics, the poly bags typically obscure the comic. A lot of times they're colored. Like Superman 75 famously is black, right? So you can't see the book through that at all. Yeah. The other problem with the polybag comic is the polybag itself is oversized, and it won't fit into the slab without damaging the book when it gets pressed together, right?
One more thing, I don't know if this is right or not too, but polybags are also extremely cheap, aren't they? They're really lousy. They're lousy material. You don't actually want that with your comic for the next 50 years. The polybags are really, really bad.
Yeah, they deteriorate faster than the paper, and they're going to add to the yellowing and browning of the pages in the book itself if it's left in the polybag. One of the nice things about shrink wrap is they typically have vent holes in them to prevent that type of thing. So my personal opinion was that we have to grade items still in the shrink wrap, and that we have to assign a grade to the shrink wrap. They had a lot of pushback on that from my head guy, who was the comic guy, right? And they're like, oh, we just don't do that. And I said, I tell you what, let's mock one up. Let's take one of my shrink wrap modules. We'll put it in a slab. We'll mark it as a prototype, and I'll bring it to the North Texas RPG Con. There's going to be a lot of luminaries there, and I'll just kind of show it around and get some feedback, right? And one of the guys I talked to was you and Ingo and several other people. And certainly it was mixed results. Some people were aghast to see the book in the slab. Some people were aghast to see the shrink wrap on the book. Yeah. And certainly, neither myself nor anyone in my company is going to, or you, Mike, we're not going to advocate that you should immediately run out and slab every single item that's in your collection.
Sure.
Right.
It'd be extremely counterproductive because, well, we can talk about this later. Go ahead. I'll talk about why that's extremely counterproductive.
Oh, yeah, that's cool. So, kind of got the survey back from the show, made a couple of posts on Facebook in the AKM and an RPG discussion group on Facebook, just sort of saying, hey, what do you guys think? Right. And I wanted to get feedback from the community before I brought it to our business leaders to say, this is sort of the pulse of the community. These are the people who are for it, and this is what they're saying, and these are the people who are against it, and these are in there. This is what.
And there was some lively discussions. I remember the ones on Facebook and the AKM especially, because the AKM is the big collector site that I've been a part of for over 20 years, and there was some pretty lively discussions there. So, but good advice, good information.
And we took it all in, and we looked at it, and I think we made the right decision in the end that we will grade items that are still in shrink wrap, and then we will assign a grade to the shrink wrap.
Even though guys like Bill Meinhardt are aghast, absolutely aghast. Hey, and I know why he is, because because it is a
I
paper.
respect Bill.
You can't grade it. You can't grade it in a shrink wrap because you don't until you tear off the shrink wrap and open it up. You don't know, is there mold inside? Is there rusty staples? You don't know what is going on in that module until you tear it open.
Right.
But conversely, I know this as a dealer collector, not just a collector. The minute you take off the shrink wrap, you destroyed the cachet of the item. The item is just another item that's unshrinked. And there's lots of those out there. There is a very small percentage of items from the 80s that still have shrink wrap, or the 70s or 80s.
And Bill is famous, he has this famous mantra that shrink wrap is not a grade, and I agree with it, right? Believe it or not, I 100% agree with Bill on that.
I do too. Yes, I absolutely.
That statement, right? It's shrink wrap is not a grade. You can have a near mint book in the shrink wrap, but what is the grade of the shrink wrap, right? Bill posted a book on the AKM recently. It was a XP Solo, I think, with the pin. But the pin had busted inside the shrink wrap, and so the module was right. And so he posted it like shrink wrap is not a grade, and he's absolutely right.
He's right.
And if something gets submitted to us like that, it's obviously going to receive a very, very low grade, right? I mean, it was horribly warped and discolored from the marker and all that stuff. So,
by the way, my saying is shrink wrap is not a condition, but it is a cachet, because it is a cachet, because there's so few items shrink wrap from that time period that you lose when you take the shrink wrap off. You almost, I would say, 99% of the time lose money on that if you're going to resell it, because like I said, it's just another item out of the shrink wrap. Once you take the shrink wrap out, when you leave the shrink wrap on, you're like, it's kind of like what was it, Monty Hall, when you had the mystery bags? You don't know what's in it. It's Schrodinger's cat. So right. Until I open that module up, and hopefully I never will open it up, it can be pristine inside. I don't know. Maybe I don't want to know.
That is the thing too, right? If it's still in shrink, and I am going to admit to buying two things in shrink that I quickly ripped the shrink off of, because I am a player, not a collector. Empire of the Petal Throne in shrink. The shrink was slightly damaged. The shrink lasted about 5 minutes before I ripped it open, and that was a good deal. And the D&D collector's box, the one that had all the reprints.
Oh, yeah. The 20th anniversary.
Yeah. I nailed that in shrink for like $75 on eBay when nobody was sleeping on it, I guess. And that I had to, because there was stuff I didn't have.
You know how many of those I busted open? I must have busted 24 of those open, because oddly enough, as a dealer, the contents, this makes no sense, 0 cents, and it's going to sound ridiculous, but you could piece out the contents more expensively than you could sell the whole box. And that's because there was a module in there, L3 Deep Dwarven Delve, which was never sold. It's the last first edition module they did until they did some in the aughts. But
that's actually one of the items, Mike, that I'm anxious to see come through the door, because I feel like, because of the way those were packaged and sold and the age of the item, there's a good chance that we're going to see 9.6s and 9.8s on those.
Yeah, because because they were in a shrink wrap box. Right. That's a great idea. I didn't think about that. That's a great.
I think if a 9.8 L3 hits the market, like, there's going to be some big bucks.
So, so that was one of the ones I was looking. But yeah, because you had all the reprints. They're all reprints. It's all reprint stuff. But yeah, you could sell the reprints for, like, I used to piece out in my head $15 a piece. This was for about 21 a lot. Right. And then if I got a box set under $100, I was making money. So I used to buy those things off eBay all day long under $100, and then I would just tear them up when I got them. Plus, there was 1,000 copies that had the signed easily print in there too. And I usually, and so there was a sticker on the box that would say that, but a lot of times the sticker was torn off. So I would just go, "Merry Christmas." No, but I think I got lucky on 2 of them where I had the signed easily print. And I probably long sold those, idiot that I am. But yeah, so that was the one thing you did different, I think, and I like the way that you see. I don't know that anything CGC does. If I matter to him, which I probably don't, I was really appreciative about the way that your company dealt with, hey, here's what we're thinking about doing. What do you guys think? Because I think there was a lot of feedback on shrink versus not shrink. And I think a lot of people first of all, you're going to get everybody that wants anything shrink wrap graded to your company because nobody wants their shrink wrap torn off. And I heard from a lot of people that sent in shrink wrap modules to CGC and they tore the shrink off. And that's what they were like, oh man, I didn't know they're going to tear the shrink off. And their policies to tear the covering off. And you very explicitly told me, nope, we are not going to tear the shrink off. We're going to grade the shrink separately. I think that's a great compromise. There's probably no one great, awesome way to do it, but I thought that was. Look, you can always take the shrink wrap off later if you don't like it, but preserving the shrink wrap on there, I think, was very important to collectors like myself because anything I have shrink at this point in my life, I'm not going to pull the shrink off. I've already seen inside of it. There's nothing that I haven't seen inside of, so I don't really care about ever pulling the shrink off. Now, somebody that wants to pull a shrink off something, they have plenty of options otherwise in the world. There's tons of unshrink stuff. They can do it. I know people like to do it. I mean, I very famously tore the shrink off a U1 one weekend about 20 years ago just so I could run it, which I cringe now because I think it was absolutely perfect, beautiful shape. But I was like, oh, I want to run this tonight. I can't find my other copy. Rip. Okay, I'll run it now, so I was an idiot. But who thought this stuff was gonna be worth this much? I mean, you figured it's gonna be worth something, but honestly, so when I first got into buying, selling, trading stuff in 1994, there was like 5 of us, and we got on AOL. AOL had something called AOL Forums. There was only like AOL, Prodigy. There's like only about 3 or 4 companies at that point, and they had something called forums. Forums, you had buy, sell, trade in the forums, and we got so much pushback from gamers who literally would tell us this stuff is not stuff you should be reselling. If you have spare gaming stuff, you need to be giving it away. You do not need to be reselling it. It is obscene. And that's not even the worst part. It's obscene the fact that you're taking something like an R1, which even back in the 90s was really hard to find, and you're charging me $300 for that? What is wrong with you? You are a miserable human being. And we would get that. A lot of the dealers, Jason Zavoda, myself, Sage's Guild guy, I can't remember his name, the Dragon Tooth guy Dragon's Trove guy was there too. Now the big one now he did not open until the late 90s. I can't remember the name. Noble Knight. Noble Knight was not around. Yeah, that was not, he didn't come around to the late 90s. And he actually learned a lot from us. I still have some emails from him asking questions about, I think I'm going to start this company. What do you think? Which is kind of cool. But
good for him.
But yeah. But so there was always feedback that, you shouldn't be making money off this. And I'm sure the same thing happened I remember going to comic stores in the 70s and I would find a comic I really wanted and the guy would have like $15 or $20 on it. I'm like, this is bullshit. I want to read this comic. And this guy is telling me I've got to pay, $25 to read a Spider-Man 88 or something. That's garbage. That's crap. And so, I realized why Golden Age stuff was okay. Yeah, that was World War II. Yeah, there's not very many of that stuff around. But I don't understand why a comic that came out 10 years ago, the guy wants $20 for. So I'm all with that. In terms of, I understand why people get upset that how dare you put this in lucite, in the plastic, and then how dare you charge more for it. But that's just the nature of hobbies, isn't it? Every hobby, whether it be coins, stamps, books, pulp magazines. Pulp magazines, they're pulp because they're literally printed on pulp paper that falls apart. It's so hard to find pulp magazines now that aren't just horrific shape because they fall apart. But every hobby like that eventually grows up to the point where somebody says, that's really hard to find and I want it. How much do you want for it?
Right.
And so, bottle caps, anything you can think of, it eventually gets to that point. And it just appears in the last probably 20 years that RPGs have hit that point, really more in the last 10 years. When I first started really buying seriously in the early 2000s, I remember getting white boxes for anywhere. You could get a white box for $100. And sometimes I got them for $50. You get them for anywhere between $50. A really, really nice one might be $150. A real nice white box.
Yeah.
And at one point,
I wish you held on to a few of those, huh?
I had 15 at one point. I had 15 white boxes. I have 3 now. I had 15, and I just sold them all. I collected a bunch of them just so I could I could have all the different prints,
Right.
And then after a while, I was like, okay, well, do I need this one? No, I'll keep this one. I have one signed by Gary Gygax. I'll keep that one. I'll keep the one that's near mint because I got one that's near mint. I'll keep the one that's, fourth print plus or something. But yeah, after a while, you just, you don't need that many. But they were cheap. Back then, they were cheap. You could get them, reasonable price. And now, of course, you can't find one under $500. And the ones $500 probably aren't going to be that great. You're going to probably have to drop $1,000 on there to get a really, really nice white box. And God and help us, don't talk about brown boxes. Gee whiz.
Oh, yeah.
And that's Eric and I have been at North Texas where one sold for $3,000. You can't, those are, and we've been to, I don't know, did you go to the Game Hole Con where Alex auctioned he had a first print that was in really poor shape. And I got to auction off, and I believe that got over $3,000. And it was very beat up, but it was a first print brown box. There was 1,000, and
Right.
and that was 5 years ago. God knows what that would go for now. Sheesh, So we're just entering that part of the hobby where people are. It's been around 50 years. It'll be D&D's 50th anniversary, and people are getting into the hobby new. People that have been in the hobby a while are saying, "I want fill in the blank, and I don't care how much I have to pay because I have this money now. I work a good job. I've got pension or whatever. I've just got enough money to spend on it." So this is just a natural progression of every hobby. Every hobby enters this stage where, baseball card. Well, the baseball cards are for kids, man. They were. But if you have a Ricky McMantle, you're not going to put that in the spokes of your bicycle unless you are clinically insane, like literally clinically insane, or you are Elon Musk and you have so much money you don't care if you just throw it away.
Sure.
No, nobody. That's your only two categories. There's no other category: clinically insane, or you're so wealthy it doesn't matter. And
while we're talking about box sets, actually, I do want to take a second to talk about the things that we won't grade at CBCS.
Okay, sure.
And these things that we won't grade typically are things that won't fit into our slab. So the chief thing is box sets, right? The box sets are way too thick; they won't fit into a slab. We won't grade the box sets. Right. Now, what we will do is we will grade the individual books out of those box sets. So if you have a couple of really cherry books out of the expert set there that you think have a shot at 9.0 or higher, you want to send them in.
And Brian, also, you guys will grade without slabbing, which Ingo had a few books done, which I thought that was I didn't even know you guys did that, but that's
really what cool we call a raw grade. And he had two books that he wanted raw graded. One of them has to be a raw grade, and that's the XP Solo with the pin. Because the pin, it won't fit in the slab, so that has to be a raw grade. So basically, it goes through all of the normal process, but instead of encapsulating it, it gets put in a Mylite with the tamper-proof sticker on the back. It just gets a label at the bottom right of the front of the bag that says what it is and what the grade is.
Right.
And the second one he had done was a book that was signed. It had a sketch inside of it. And he already had a buyer for that book, and the guy just wanted a professional grade.
And that's probably something you want to look at. And I've realized because I made a few mistakes. I brought some stuff in, and now I have a different approach to bring things in. I probably would no longer bring in interior signed books because half the fun of it. I have a DDs and Demigods that's signed by Jim Ward, Rob Kuntz, Darlene, Errol Otis, Jeff Easley, Jeff D. I mean, everybody that worked on the book. I wouldn't want that slab. Half the fun is opening up and people eyes out. And Diesel drew a sketch in there, and and that's half the fun of it. So
and everything doesn't have to be slabbed. I mean, so that does lead me to the other part of that, which is we won't grade or encapsulate the hardback books.
Right. And that makes sense. That also makes sense too because you don't have a slab big enough for that. But I mean, I think that's something that might take off eventually because if you look at the prices that first print monster manuals, dungeon master guides, and players handbooks go for now, they go for quite a bit. I mean, compared to all the other print runs, especially the 6th print run through the 8th or 10th, there was much more. If you open your player's handbook first edition, 90% of the time it's going to say 6th print on it. That was the biggest, largest print. Everything up to that is harder to find.
When you see the yellow or the red paper in there, that's when you get excited.
That's when your eyes start glowing, and then if you look at, you see, whoa! I did have a first print is my first print monster manual here? I was, so this is the life of a collector, whatever. I'm going through books the other day and I find a first print monster manual I didn't even know I had. It was just sitting in a box. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And so I can't find it. Damn it. I want to show it. Let's see if I might find it later on. I'll look for it. But yeah, so that's the kind of stuff that actually has gone up quite a bit in value of the first prints. Now recently, a first print monster manual that was signed by there was 3 artists that worked on the book, Trampier and Dave Solon. Tom Wom did I think 2 illustrations, only 2, but Tom Wom did 2. And so one was signed by all 3 of the artists plus Gary Gygax's signature. So you think that's just like a holy grail book, and that sold for $26,000 on eBay.
That's a big one.
Yeah, and so of course this is when Bill Meinhardt says he has one. But his also belonged to Tim Kask. So, so just start at the base of 26 and go up from there. 26. So his is probably worth 30 or more. But yeah, so that's the kind of stuff that you might want to get slabbed once you looked at it and oohed and awed over the fact that it's signed by those 4 guys. You might think about,
and that is a service. Yeah, that is a service that we offer, is signature verification. We're the only people in the industry who do that. And that's actually done through Beckett Authentication Services. They're autograph experts. They're world renowned. They're on Pawn Stars. I got a guy. He's the guy from BAS, right? But they verify those signatures for us. In fact, you had a verified signature, I think, on one of your books that you submitted.
I had 2. Well, I had 2. I had Easley cover. This is an Easley cover. It's really hard to see. Unfortunately, it's silver ink. I have one in gold ink. I should have brought that instead. And I've also got a couple of adventures that were signed by Merle Rasmussen inside.
So your books go through that process. We actually also have a witness signature program, which means an employee
which is very cool.
Has to be present to witness the signature. There's only one of those ever that we've encapsulated because it was one that I had done as a test. It was a book that I got signed in North Texas, and it's actually, I got it right here. It's only a 4.0, but again, we just did this sort of as a mock-up.
Yeah, just trying it out. So you got
signed by Jeff D and Diesel.
Oh wow,
we're both guests at the show, and so yours says verified signature, but mine actually says witness signature Jeff D and Diesel 6/1/2023. It actually also says CBCS prototype.
And so to bring back the curtain a little bit, we're thinking we may do this we may do this next year at North Texas. So we're to see if we can work out a signature verification thing where we can have Jeff D sign the cover of S2, and then
we want to be there.
And then you're there. You can verify it. Boom, this is Jeff D. Yeah, it was Jeff D. So we may do that. That in the conventions is a perfect place to do that because especially North Texas, you have Darlene there, you have Jeff D, you've got Jeff Easley most years, you've got Errol Otis some years, obviously Diesel's there. I mean, Alan Hammock, Zeb Cook, all these guys are there. So it makes sense that, to do something like that at a convention. I think that might be big in the future too, just to have a verified signature at the convention. Because I mean, comics do that all the time, right? This is nothing new for comics. Comics have been doing that for 20 years, where they do here's the auction guys. They're going to verify it, and you walk up with your books, and it's all done right there at the table. Games are a little bit behind that. We're a little, and that's also probably a little bit why we're getting so much. There's a lot of negative feedback that comes with slabbing or grading books. Because it just started in the hobby. Anything that just starts out is new. And Eric and I know enough grognards. We know all kinds of grognards that anything that's not using the first 3 books raw is crap.
Is not good.
Yes, change is bad.
Is not good.
And so,
and look, I get it, and the company understands slabbing isn't for everyone. There are many prominent comic book collectors who've never owned a slabbed comic, and that's okay.
I didn't for a long time. I absolutely did not for a long time. Yeah.
But there are some people who want to preserve and verify and get a professional grade on their book, either for themselves personally or later to sell. And I haven't built it yet, but I'm going to build some. I'm going to put some. I want to call them racks, but that's not right. Some rails on my office wall to display some of these modules.
These cases are. We haven't talked about the case yet. These cases are absolutely incredible. They're half an inch thick. So the 2 reasons I started doing this. Number one was so it would be easier to sell for my spouse and or whoever wants to sell them when it's done, because they just want to be right. Number two, because as you saw before the show, as I tried to stick something in a plastic bag, I probably knocked it down a half grade. Would you say, Brian, when I was trying to stick that book
probably
back?
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I want to answer Wizard Tower Games question. Our slabs do have a very light UV protection on them, but it's certainly not. Don't put your books in direct sunlight, no matter what.
No.
Don't leave them in the window.
Well, don't put it in the window.
But I want my neighbors to see this. My 9.0 RPG. I'm going to put this right here so my neighbors can see it tomorrow morning when the sun comes out.
The books are protected from humidity. They are not hermetically sealed, so don't drop them in a pool. They have small vents in them to allow off gassing as the book because off gases over time.
Because actually, and this is counterintuitive, isn't it, Brian? You don't want airtight, do you? You want there to be a little bit of air in there. Otherwise, airtight can cause really major issues, especially if there's just the teeniest bit of something like rust or mold in there. You might get all kinds of anaerobic bullshit going on in their comic. I'm so proud of Dragon 2. My Dragon 1, not so much.
It's still a Dragon 1, though, Mike.
Yeah, it's a 7.5, which the Dragon ones are hard to find in super nice condition because of the white cover.
That's exactly right.
But that's not how you grade books, is it? You grade it you just grade it. You don't say, oh, this is nicer than the other Dragon ones. No, you guys say, look, I'm grading it just how I'm going to grade any book. And so it looks really nice. And so this is the kind of thing I'll display. And so number one was for my relatives or spouse or survivors to sell. Number two is so I can actually handle these and drop them and put them places and maybe even display them like next year's convention. I'll probably bring some of these and not have to worry about them getting damaged, because as you showed me, Brian, there's no movement inside. And this thing is, like I said, it's half an inch thick. It's just, they look beautiful. They look beautiful and they are extremely sturdy. So I don't feel bad about bringing those to show people or display them at some point on the wall of my office.
If you pick up one of our competitors' slabs, it's a magazine-sized slab like that, and shake the book back and forth, you'll hear a tick, tick, tick.
Which you showed me that, and I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked when you showed me that CGC's books. Not naming a competitor by name, but it was a CGC book. Yes, I can't believe they moved. I was even really impressed by for instance, the Warriors of Mars, which is digest size, and you guys will probably get a lot of digest size stuff in, because a lot of the digest size stuff is some of the valuable stuff. Now it's only 6.5, but I still want it in there. I mean, it's not super great condition. Still 6.5, still fine, so it's fine condition.
Mike, it's still the highest graded copy in the world.
It is, because it's the old one.
There you go.
But you have a little. I looked in the back and I was like, oh, there's a little container it goes inside the slab. So it's not just like you stick it in the slab, put the slab on there. No, it's actually
held in place. There's an inner well, and both the slab and the inner well are made out of PET G, which is basically the absolute best thing you can make a plastic material out of. They use it for medical devices like artificial knees and stuff that have plastic components. Use PET G, but the inner well is heat sealed, and then the outer well is sonic sealed. So all day at the office, you can hear it. As they're sealing up the slabs, yeah.
So that's very cool. So, Eric, you what questions do you have, if any, about this? Because I want you to ask questions to somebody that's not super into it.
Well, here's the thing. I'm going to make an observation, because there was a point where I was fairly heavy into collecting collectible coins. A lot of the silver ones that were coming out, you wanted to get uncirculated 70 or proof 69, whatever you were looking for, but also getting some older coins that were graded. And my experience was, if it was slabbed, if it was sealed, that rating was what it was. But there were often times when on eBay, the person grading those coins was grading from, eyes that liked their own product a lot more than maybe the eyes that were going to see it later. And I found that the grading companies, for the most part, were very consistent comparing what I was getting. But again, if they weren't being graded and sealed. Now, with coins, though, you get all the coin is the front and the back. As long as you can see the front and the back, you're seeing the whole product. Aside from the feeling of touching metal, which is fine until you leave fingerprints on it, and grease. When it comes to comic books, when it comes to game material, I understand the disconnect that people get of, holy shit, I can't open this up again. What the hell? But the reality is, you're not going to be opening up something that's an 8 or a 9 or higher at your gaming table, taking out your pencil and scribbling in hit points as they're being taken off.
Yeah.
I mean,
if you're reading your Dragon One at the dinner table, eating your chili dog and drinking Kool-Aid, like, once again, you're certifiably insane, or you have so much money that money doesn't matter to you. Yes,
you hit on a couple of important things there, right? I mean, certainly all three of us have seen many eBay listings where the listing says near mint, and you look at it and it's obvious.
In the comic industry, it's a huge joke. It's a joke in the comic industry because everything's listed as near mint. Yeah.
I mean, it happens in this hobby as well. Mm-hmm. Right, a near mint is a 9.2 or higher. Now 9.2 is near mint minus. So, Mikey, you know how hard it is to get something that high grade. So when you're looking at
everything I brought,
when they say near mint, like 9 times out of 10, it's not near mint, right? And that's
everything that I brought.
Professional grading exists is to take that question mark out of the equation,
right?
When you're buying and selling these collectible items. Now, when you talk about, like, at a coin, you can see the front and the back of cards. You can see the front and the back. Once you encapsulate your RPG item, it's not impossible to take out. You can certainly take it out anytime you want to. It's not the easiest thing in the world, but it can be done without damaging the item inside of it if you really, really want to. But, I mean, let's be real here. If you really want to play R1, you can find a PDF.
Right. Yeah. Right. The people that were being very disingenuous that I argued with, that I discussed with online, were of the opinion that, well, you know, now once you start encapsulating this stuff, I'll never be able to read it or play it. And look, I have a PDF of every single thing in my collection, even the rare stuff, because you know what? You can make your own PDFs. And despite what some people said when they discussed with me online, PDFs aren't going anywhere. They're not disappearing. Yes, you can make your own PDFs. It's not that hard. You can find everything you know. One of the sad things really about our industry is 5 hours after something comes out, it's on a free service online, which is really sad for most authors who, you know, live and die by, you know, printing and reprints. But for all God, we found we have no way to stop it, and because it happens to us every single time we publish something, within an hour, it's on a free site. Yeah. So anything that you want, and I got in a discussion with a guy about, I got a discussion with Joe Block because he said, well, I want to read my Dragon magazines. I said, okay, first of all, okay, let's say you wanted to read Dragon 15. Number one, do you really want to get your Dragon 15 out and paw through it? Or would you do what I did? And I did it was I Googled Dragon Magazine 15, pushed a button. The first thing that came up was a PDF of Dragon Magazine 15. I read it all to my heart's content. I could have downloaded it if I want. I could have downloaded it and printed it out on my computer if I want to. So the discussion point that, oh my gosh, this stuff's meant to be read, and that, you know, if you put it in there, nobody can see it. It's BS, because everything is available out there. I don't care how rare it is. ST1 Up the Garden Path was considered one of the rarest DD modules. There is a PDF of that out there. Despite what somebody told me, they're wrong. I have a PDF of it. There's a PDF of pretty much everything out there ever published. So, you know, and PDFs are not going away, despite what some people said. So that's just, you know, that is a discussion point. I understand if somebody feels like, personally, and that's what the pressure I got from Joe Block. I mean, we love Joe Block. Joe and I, don't get me wrong, Eric and I love Joe, but he is an old-fashioned dude, and I get the idea. I understand his idea that these books are meant to be read and used or whatever. That's great, and if somebody wants to do that, that's fine. But also, if somebody wants to put their copy in plastic, it doesn't bother me either. Neither one bothers me, because there's no way all these are ever going to be encapsulated. You're not going to be able to encapsulate every copy of R1. Yes, there weren't a lot printed, but you're not going to be able to encapsulate them all. There's just too many. There's too many out there. There's too many PDFs out there. There's too many copies. I mean, believe me, if I have a PDF copy, I'm the most untechnological human alive. There's got to be another 10,000, 20,000 copies out there.
And the comic industry went through the whole similar thing, right? Where, I'll never be able to read it again. Why would I ever want to do that?
These books were meant to be. Spider-Man #1 was meant to be read. So was the Gutenberg Bible. Nobody pauses through the Gutenberg Bible anymore because it's in a freaking museum.
Or the Book of Kells.
When your hobby grows up enough, you say, okay, that's great, but do you really need to read your Dragon magazine? #1, when you can find it online and read it. I understand if you have a personal copy that's dog-eared and it's already beat up and it's in terrible condition.
Right, and that's the difference between buying something to read and buying something to collect, right? Some people are readers, some people are collectors. I have thousands and thousands of comic books, and I can promise you I haven't read all of them. I've read a whole lot of them, but there's a lot that I haven't read. Just like you were telling me earlier, Mike, with your Avengers 4, that you don't think that you had ever opened it up. Because you were collecting it, not necessarily buying it to read. Looks like Mike's having audio issues.
Michael, can you hear us? Can't hear us. No. This isn't unheard of. It is Michael. It's bound to happen. Yeah, Mike's probably wondering what crap we're talking about, and we should make fun of him in the chat. But I mean, I used to collect comic books when I was younger, and did I poly them? Yeah. Did I put a backing on them that was non-acidic? Sometimes. But the reality is,
sorry guys, my headphones went out for a minute there. I missed it, so sorry about that.
Yeah, but the reality is, most of those comic books that I collected, whether it was Sandman #1 or the DC Presents #26, the first appearance of the new Teen Titans, I read the crap out of them at the time because I was younger. That's why the ones that are in mint or near mint or very fine plus are valuable because people didn't get their grubby hands on it constantly.
Yeah. You know what? That reminds me. I do want to talk about one other thing, Mike. You're holding up your comics, and the RPG books have the same thing. If you turn around on the back label real quick and show the camera, Mike, can you see that QR code in the bottom right corner?
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah.
Down here, yeah.
So you can scan that with your phone, and it'll take you to the website, and there'll be grader notes on there. It'll tell you why the book got the grade that it
Very
did.
Cool. Yeah, that's very useful too.
So for instance, your Fantastic Four, I don't remember what was wrong with it, right? But it probably says something like fine stress, break color.
So I brought two Fantastic Fours in. They're really, or one was 23, one was 28. The 23 was a 9 point something, which is amazing. This was the exact same condition except for one small flaw. On the very back, there's a pinhole hole in it. Just, I mean, tiny hole. That knocked it down to 6.5 pretty much. They were in the exact same condition. Except for that, there's a hole, and you can see the hole when you look at it. So, yeah, that knocked it down, which makes me very impressed with your grading standards because one of the things that Ingo and I found out very quickly was that, so I didn't bring you anything I didn't think was an 8.0 or higher. The grading standards are extremely strict. You guys are not giving easy grades just so everybody can go home happy that I got a bunch of 9.0s. You're going to have to have.
Our philosophy is we want to give you the absolute highest grade we can without being wrong.
Right.
That's how we approach every book.
That's why this Dragon 2 at 9.0 blew me away because I only got 3 9.0s, and this was one of them. This was the oldest one I got a 9.0 on, and so that blew me away because I think that might be the highest Dragon 2 for a long, long time because you guys are very strict in your grading, but fair. I mean, fair. I think there's some things now that I know, like for instance, one of the things you grade very severely on is color break. Color break is a big thing.
Happy to hear that, Bill. Feel free to reach out to me on Facebook if you have any questions personally. I'll be happy to work with you.
But color break is huge. Now, color break is really big in comics, especially older comics. You get the color break on the spine. Yep. But I didn't realize. So on some D&D modules, Ingo and I looked at this. It's not an issue on some D&D modules. There's certain D&D modules where color break is a major issue. It's going to be extremely hard to find any copies of those that were ever opened that graded like 8.5 or higher.
Yeah, and color breaking spine stress or color breaking creases are going to be probably the number one thing that is going to hurt a book with the grade. Obviously, if pieces are missing, inserts are missing, a tear, those are all going to be big problems. But the most common thing for a book that you're going to send in and be like, man, why is this an 8? I thought it was really nice. And you're going to look at it and you're going to see a whole bunch of color breaking spine stress.
Now, for instance, here's my Dragon 5. That's a 7. And once I looked at it, I'm like, yeah, it's not as good as the 2 and the 1. And there's issues. Tiny issues. But that's why I was really impressed with you guys. And, I'm always impressed when I see Bill Meinhardt grade something because he's extremely strict grader also. But I was really impressed. And that just made me realize that it's going to be extremely hard to find near mint gaming items because unlike even comics, so a lot of times there was people that would read a comic and put it in a plastic. I did that when I was a kid in the 70s. Yeah. I would read a comic, put it in a plastic bag. Nobody did that with modules. But first of all, there weren't anything to hold modules back then. Magazine bags weren't even a thing back then. So there was nothing to put a module in to protect it. And modules, what did we do with modules? We played with them around the table with pizza and Coca-Cola.
And you wrote in them with pencil.
You wrote in them with pencil, yes. So
I want to address Marcelo's comment real quick. He said that he was afraid he didn't have anything worthy to submit, and that might be true. But I will tell you that this is the golden age. Right now is the time to be scouring the dealers and eBay for near mint plus books that you can submit, because when
even common, even like B2s or X5s or anything like that, because what I just said, what Brian's telling you too, is the chances you're going to find anything in really nice condition are very low, extremely low.
When people start realizing how rare these things are, and we finally get a 9.4, 9.6, or 9.8 vintage module, it's going to be significant multipliers to the value.
Oh yeah, my personal opinion, for what it's worth, is I think most modules, if you get a 9.4 or higher, it's going to raise the grade 5 to 10 times, and it should, because that's how rare they are. But
Bill, we discussed a little earlier. The hardcover books are a little bit too big to fit in the slab, so we're not doing those right now.
But the payoff's going to be huge for stuff like that. But you have to realize also that, like you said, we played these. We use these a lot. Even and honestly, the more common a module is, the more it got played. Because how many people bought a B2 and didn't play your B2? Everybody played B2. Everybody B2 is probably, I think B2 or X1 are the most printed modules of all time, because they
B2 is fantastic. Yeah, I love that module.
So here's my set I pulled out of the garage today. And look what's in there is an X1. So B2s and X1s were the most printed modules. It's going to be hard to find a nice one because they were so well played. Everybody played them. And so,
Mike, that X1 that was in the box looks really nice.
It did look really nice. I think I probably put a crease in it when I pulled it out, and I held it the wrong way. The boxes these boxes are in terrible shape though. But so that's one of the considerations, is that condition is huge. And look, so my personal opinion about some of this stuff is, if you have an average condition module, I would not worry about it getting slapped. I see some stuff right now on eBay that's rated 4.0. Now, you just showed us a 4.0, but that was for your personal. You just wanted to get that done,
right? And it's double signed with witness signatures. Yeah.
Sure. But honestly, I see some stuff on eBay there's an S1 on there right now that's a 5.0. That is average condition. There are hundreds, if not thousands of those out there in average condition. If you don't have anything over 6.5, I would say it's probably, unless it's super rare. Now, if it's super rare, get it done no matter what. If you have if
it's just your personal childhood copy that you want to preserve.
You want to show it, like this is the Q1 that I that Mike group went through, and this is the one I used, and I want that on my shelf in a slab. That's great. But I think that's what's gonna clear out the wheat from the chaff, is that after a while there's going to be a lot of people getting substandard stuff slab, 5.0, 6.0, and that's when if you have something that's really nice, and that's why I'm not worried about everything getting slabbed, because it shouldn't be slabbed. I mean, if you have an average condition module, once again, unless it's an ST1 or just something super rare, don't get it slabbed, because it's just, unless you want to spend the money just to have your nice personal copy. I see some very aspirational prices on eBay right now with some CGC stuff that's in not very good condition at all. It's not in good condition, and people want really, really huge amounts because, hey, this is it's slabbed and it's, it's whatever, and I want, $2,000 for it. That's crazy. And the but the market is going to even itself out. Well, once people start realizing that you need to be looking for 6.0 or higher, I think the people are going to realize it's not really worth it to be slabbing this stuff that's 5.0. Like I said, unless you have a personal connection to it, or I don't know why you would want something done, but just don't expect to get a lot of money for it. And I see that in the comic industry a lot too. People say that, oh, I've got this comic and it's worth a lot. And then I used to work in a comic store part-time, and some of the saddest stories I ever had were talking on the phone to people and like, hey man, I'm going to bring my collection in, and it's got a Daredevil #1 and this. I'll be like, man, that sounds great, bring it in. And they bring it in and it would be just trashed, like just absolute poor or fair condition, lowest grade level, 1.0, and I'm just like, dude, your guide says this is worth, $3,500. We could give you about $25 for it, because it's just in such terrible, and they didn't understand condition was such a major player. And so I think we're going to have the same shakeout in RPG. And that's why people are so scared of, is something that's not going to happen, is that this stuff all gets slabbed, because people aren't going to spend. And by the way, that's another thing we didn't bring up too, is when I slap my stuff,
Bill wants me to tell you to shut up, Mike. Bill wants.
I'm excited about this. I want to hear it. I was going to say, but the average price to get the average price to get something slabbed was between $35 and $45, and that's including flattening. I had everything that
pressing.
I had flattened.
Yeah, so let's talk about that real quick. That is a that is a service that we offer at CBCS. The same the way we do for comics. We do offer pressing for modules. We also offer a service called press screening. Well, I think the pressing costs $15. Press screening, I think, costs $8. And with the press screening, we will evaluate it. The pressers and the graders will evaluate your book and see if you can get a higher grade by going through the pressing process. If we decide to press your book, it's just $15 and you don't get charged $8 on top of it. The $8 is only if we screen it and don't press it.
Yeah, that's good.
Bill had a question about page count. It's not page count because the varying thicknesses of the covers, Bill. It's total thickness, and it's roughly half an inch. If you go to cbcscomics.com and go to magazine submissions, you'll see the exact dimensions. But realistically, what I found is the brown supplemental books like Complete Fighter, we can do those. That's about as thick as we can go to still fit into the slab. So, and I actually think that a lot of those square-bound books, the square-bound soft covers, have a chance to get some really high grades because they were made with really high-quality cover stock.
Some of those are very rare. There's some that are very rare, like the Complete Ninja book, the Complete Necromancer book. There's some that are quite rare. Yeah. And Don had a good question there too. Don said, question as a publisher, I started this month. We'll have several soft cover items. Would you suggest I get one grade of each product just for the shelf and display? I think that's a great idea, Don.
I'm obviously biased, but I would say yes. And and this is something I've talked to you before about, Mike, too, but with publishers. So like if you're doing a Kickstarter and you want to offer one of your rewards as a 9.8 graded copy of your item, once you get your item printed, you can send us a case of the book and say, hey, we need 10 9/8. It will basically go through there, and it's brand new. So I'm assuming that unless there's a big printing problem, there should be some 9/8 in there. And we would just go through them for you and pull out however many 9/8 that you wanted for your customers. Or the other thing that we can do as a creator, as an author or an artist, you can actually set up an account for yourself, sign the items, and send them in, and they would get the yellow label as a witness signature. So Wizard's Tower, if you wanted to get your whole creative team to sign a few copies and send them in as witness signatures, that's certainly possible. There's a few hoops to jump through to get authorized to do that. So you can reach out to me personally, Brian T at cbcscomics.com, or you can reach out to me on Facebook if that's easy. My profile is public, so whatever is easiest for you.
Bill said, "What about the little brown books?" Yeah, that would be something because you can't slab the brown box, but you could slab the books inside, which would be
Yeah, the
something.
pamphlet books, just like your Warriors of Mars, right?
Yeah, the digest size. Yeah,
Yeah, all those digest size books absolutely can be slabbed. I will warn you that one of the things that Mike discovered is because they're smaller, the grades end up being a little weird on them. So, for instance, a 1-inch
There's
crease on a module takes up significantly less surface area than a 1-inch crease on a digest size pamphlet.
very
Right?
very strict. That Warriors of Mars, I was surprised was 6.5, but it makes sense once explained to me because it's less area. It's graded stricter on things that wouldn't be noticed as much on a larger surface, and so that makes
Right.
sense.
For instance, I remember because I graded that book, it has a 1-inch indent in the middle of the back cover that has a little bit of I think it's from a pencil or something because it had like a stain in it.
Yeah, it looks like somebody wrote on a piece of paper that was on top of it. I mean, I can't even. It's barely visible through the plastic, but yes, that's yeah.
So
Actually,
so I just want to talk about the cost, Mike, because you said $35 to $40 or 40, whatever you said. So the actual cost to grade any RPG item is $25. You submit it through the magazine tier at cbcscomics.com. The reason yours costs more is because I think you had almost every single thing that you sent in except for the shrink wrap books pressed, and that's an additional $15 charge. So if you want to get the pressing, it's $15 on top of the grading fee, which is $25.
I averaged everything together too, so that
Sure.
because I brought some comics in too, so we're talking comics and games. So I average everything together just to make it make sense for me money wise. And the last load I brought to you was almost all shrink wrap. That was actually cheaper. Those ran about $35 a piece. The first load I brought in was $45 a piece because that stuff all had to be pressed. And so yeah, you're right. That and I would highly recommend you do that. It absolutely makes the books look nicer. Because it gets out the creases. If there's any waviness, anything like that, it just, it gets all that stuff out. It's really, the books look very sharp after being pressed.
Oh yeah. Bill, that's a great idea. And please send me an email if you want to do some signed copies since you're the publisher. Just to make sure we can get you authorized to do that.
Yeah, and I'll say one thing. I wish we had done that. So this year, our con release was B4.5. Beyond the Lost City. Sold out, 200 copy run, sold out. I wish that I had brought a couple dozen copies to you guys, Brian, and then had you look through there for a 9.8. I think that would have done really well because that print run's completely sold out now. So.
Yeah. Jaboki, so we can't slab them if it's bigger than the magazine size, but we do, as we talked earlier about the raw grading, we can do a raw grade on that, which would come in a MyLite with a tamper-proof sticker sealing it in there, and have a sticker on the bottom right of the front of the bag saying what it is and what the grade is.
Yeah, I came across my color book the other day. I was wondering about that because it's large. It's larger than even I think the Life magazine style. Remember the Marvel Treasuries, or whatever they used to call them?
Yeah, that's actually the biggest one that we can raw grade is the Treasury size book.
Well, I think you know what, Brian? I think the coloring book may be that size. I don't think it's bigger than that.
Is it that big?
It's pretty big. Yeah, I have one downstairs. I don't feel like running downstairs to grab it, but I just pulled it out the other day. I don't think it's bigger. I think it's about almost the same size as they call them they're called treasure editions. Yeah, I used to have a bunch of those. Yeah. And those are impossible to find in good condition because they didn't fit in any plastic. They were too big for your box, and unless you laid them flat and you put them up like that, they all got bent in the top. So the treasure editions are hard to find. But
we raw graded a 9.4 treasury. I think it might have been the Superman versus Muhammad Ali, and it sold. It was a 9.4. And it sold for a very significant premium.
Sure, because they're impossible to find.
Yeah.
Impossible to
find. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, I remember those treasury editions from back in the day. You got them because they stood out. But even at your newsstand, they were crushed into whatever they were in.
Yeah, they couldn't sell them. Yeah.
They sold a lot of them. Those were a lot of people got those for Christmas. They were Christmas presents.
But unless you stored them flat all those years, and which I did a lot of the times. I had the
Oh, yeah.
Howard the Duck. I had almost all those. I had the Howard the Duck. I had the Superman versus Spider-Man, all those, and they all. I sold them all a few years back because they just were trash. They were in terrible shape because the way even me, I was a comic collector. I still didn't store them the right way.
Yeah.
Well,
and they were never worth anything either.
No. And the gaming wise, I'll tell you a tough one. If anybody wants to start grading this stuff, it's going to be tough to find nice copies. And that's White Dwarf magazine. Now, White Dwarf magazine, only the first few issues are really worth anything. Maybe the first 5 or 6, but those are oversized. Also, they're not Dragon magazine size. They're about that much taller, which means they didn't fit in the magazine bags completely, and they wouldn't fit in the magazine size boxes. So when you put that lid on, crunch. You crush the top of those White Dwarfs. So finding an early issue White Dwarf is going to be a tough one too.
And those would have to be raw graded as well. And I do want to be clear. We talked a whole bunch about TSR and D&D products. We'll grade any RPG item as long as it'll fit in the slab or a raw grade.
I don't think I did do one unusual item, which was the TSR1 AD&D Insidious, the famous banned edition, which. And I'll tell you why it was banned, because it says Advanced Dungeons and Dragons on the cover, which they were not authorized to use, the Hibbs brothers. Plus, the designation number is TSR1, which, like a really good friend of ours, Eric and I, they were really not allowed to use that either. So they printed, I can't remember how many copies. They actually got a C&D from from WotC. And yes, this is, and Alex Kamer kind of made fun of me online. He said, "You got that slab?" I said, "Well, it's just I love the story behind it. It's got a good story because they were pulled out of circulation. Doug and myself bought about 10 copies each because we knew it was going to be hard to find someday. We every once in a while we'll still auction one off at the North Texas auction, but I only had 3 or 4 copies. I started getting them signed by Jeff Easley on the cover because he did an amazing cover. That cover is just an amazing cover." And so
he also did the black and white for that cover is on the first page also.
Right. And so anyway, that was one item I got that's not an actual WotC.
I think we called that, we labeled that the recalled edition, I think, right?
Yeah, recalled edition, which I love it. That's great. Yeah, but I mean, I don't know what else you're going to call it. So when I brought stuff in for you guys, I just brought a variety of stuff. I brought a potpourri of I brought some Japanese stuff. Which I'm I've got a lot of Japanese shrink wrap, which I think I dropped off a couple more this time. The Japanese stuff is in really good shape. The shrink wrap stuff, one of them was a 9.0, was a B3 Palace of Silver Princess. I was very impressed with the fact that you actually translated this on the cover and found out this is actually the second printing of this, because it includes some cardboard stand-ups that aren't in the first printing. So that was kind of
I think it says dungeon tiles or something like that.
Yeah. So they had so a lot of the Japanese. What the cool about the Japanese stuff is, a lot of the Japanese stuff had extra artwork in it. Sometimes they would have extra add-on stuff. So Japanese collecting is really interesting. Now, not that any of us can read Japanese, but just the fact that you flip through there and you're like, wow, that's some original.
And I'll say very specifically with that module, if you send in an unshrinked copy, please make sure that it has that cardboard insert. And I believe it's the B3. I'm going from memory here, but I think it's the B3 that also has almost like a fortune cookie size piece of paper in it that has
a little tiny slip. Yeah, it has a rabbit.
So if you send in a unshrink wrapped copy of that and it's missing that will be a grade deduction because it's incomplete.
And so that was one of the big questions, Brian, that a lot of the collectors went on and on about, was that, well, these guys don't know what's supposed to be in these modules. So they don't know if there's supposed to be a map in there or a handout. Like, for instance, let's look at a module, real famous module like B10, right? B10, Knight's Dark Terror. Great adventure. One of the best basic adventures I've written. However, it has a counter sheet. It has a large fold-out map, and to add to that, it has a double cover. There's an interior cover too. I would assume that if you get a copy of that, you're checking for all that stuff, right? Because you guys have a database.
100 million%.
Yeah.
And most of that stuff I know, but I don't just go from memory. I always double check. We're lucky that there are many websites that talk about what is and is not in these modules and the different printings. So, we're lucky that we have access to that information, and of course, we have our internal database as well.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I thought was funny is that you guys, I guess I just thought there was a bunch of goobers in there that you guys only knew comics, you don't know anything about game stuff, and so you have no clue if a map's in there or not. And I'm thinking there's stuff, but at this point of our hobby, after 50 years, you go on the internet, there's sites for all that stuff. It tells you exactly what's supposed to be included because especially the Dragonlance, I think they were very guilty of this, where they would not put on the back there was a color map.
Yeah, like DL10, I think has the counter card, the counters, and I don't think it's listed on the back.
So let's say I send in a Night's Dark Terror. So let's just say this: I send a Night's Dark Terror. There's no counter sheet in there. What do you grade that on? So, but it's a beautiful shape, but no counters.
So what we've decided is it's going to be a case-by-case basis, and it's going to be based on how much is missing and how playable and how it affects the playability of the module. So if there's just one chit missing from that punch card, right, it's going to be a deduction, but it's not going to be gigantic. You're not going to start at a 5.
And,
right?
and you'll list it on there. You'll say, hey, missing
say,
counter.
Chit card, whatever we decide to call it, missing one counter. We haven't had to come up with the exact language for that yet because no one submitted one that's missing yet. But it'll say something. It'll be on the label, like where yours said signed by Merle Rasmussen. It would instead say, missing one counter, or again, whatever language we decide on. I don't want to give you an exact grade because honestly, that decision would rest with our finalizer. I can make an argument one way or the other, but I can tell you, for instance, a good place to start, one thing that we have absolutely defined is Spider-Man 238, the famous first appearance of the Hobgoblin that was published with a little pocket insert of tattoos that were stapled in there. If those tattoos, if that is missing, we start that at a 7.5. So if it's a 9.8 that's missing, it's a 7.5.
And the funny part about that, Brian, is I don't know how long you've been collecting comics. Nobody cared about that for about the first 10 years. It wasn't until people started saying, hey, mine has this little tattoo thing that it's in there, and yours doesn't. Oh, if it doesn't, that means it's not complete, because nobody cared about that when that issue was hot. And people were paying whatever price there was, and it wasn't until years later that they realized it's not complete without the little tattoos thing that was stuck in the middle. People used to pull it out. They tear it out and throw it away. Or some of them, I think, were printed without the tattoos, correct? I can't remember exactly how the sequence of that. But yeah, nobody cared about that until about 20 years ago. Then everybody's like, tattoos or no tattoos? What do you mean? It's got to have the tattoos in there.
It's funny that we started talking about that because that's one of the niches of comic book collecting that I do. Believe it or not, every single Marvel comic that was published that month, every single one of them, there is a small print run that has the tattoos in them.
Ooh. But fortunately for all of us collectors, really, I think the only thing that came out that month that was really worth anything was Spider-Man 238, first appearance of Hobgoblin, because
Fantastic Four 252 is worth a little bit of money now as well, and every single one of those also had the tattoos in it. But like G.I. Joe 9, I think it's Star Wars 48. Like I have examples of both of those that have tattoos in them that came out.
Wow, interesting. Don had another question.
Wizard Tower Games. What I would tell you for that, instead of sending it in for grading, we can encapsulate it with the witness signature, and it would just say what it is without a grade on it, because that's a one-off item and it's a test plate for art. There's no reason to get it graded, right? And it actually would cost a little bit less because you don't have to pay for the grading; you just pay for the encapsulation.
Yeah, once again, let's just to remind everybody, or if you weren't here earlier, you guys will grade stuff without slabbing it. You do not have to have it put in an unbreakable, can never be removed. Wink, wink.
You can get it in.
You just get it grade.
Yeah, that would be what we call the raw grade, where it comes in a Mylite sealed with tamper-proof stickers and a label on the bottom right front cover of the bag. CBCScomics.com magazine select raw grade. Specifically for his example, though, that would be encapsulated. It just wouldn't have a grade on it. It would probably say art, or it might say ASP on it. It would probably just say ASP, which is our authorized signature program. And it would just be encapsulated with what it is and what the signatures are that are on it.
Now, I'm sure pimping your business a lot, Brian. How am I being compensated for this?
Well, Mike, you're being compensated by having me as a personal friend and being able to drop your books off in person at the office.
Because that was one question somebody threw at me like a big gotcha. They thought they were going to really get me. Well, you're why are you so into this? How are you being compensated? And the answer was, I'm not at all. I'm spending all my own money. And the only compensation I got was just the fact I got, like you said, I got to talk to you personally. But I assume did you talk to Ingo? You talked to Ingo too.
Yeah.
I mean, he walked in. I mean, I'm assuming if you walk in with a big giant collection of books, you probably will get to talk to Brian if he's available. And
anybody dropping off RPG items at the office, if they want to talk to me, you can ask me, and I'll happily run out and go through your books with you and help you put them in if they're not in the computer yet.
And Brian was very helpful. I brought a big stack of stuff, and we went through it. And I actually had a Metamorphosis Alpha. By the way, I found a nicer Metamorphosis Alpha in my collection, which I probably need to bring. You're going to get slapped. But I had a Metamorphosis Alpha that was signed by Jim Ward. It was a little rough. We looked at it. We figured, and once we started looking at it, I think you guesstimated it at about 6.5. Looking at how you grade, I don't think it would even been a 6.5, Brian. I think that would have been a 6.0 or lower. It was pretty rough on the edges, So we kind of talked me out of that one, which I'm glad you did, because I'm thinking, because I've changed my mind about signatures. Like I said, if it's not signed on the cover, I'm probably not really hot to get it. I'm going to look at getting a lot of stuff signed by Jeff D. Easily on the cover. Darlene did the cover for one of the covers for B1, the brown cover. I'm going to look more towards that, or Elmore covers, than I am interior, because it's kind of fun to open up a book and see a signature in there. And it kind of, at least to me, this is just me, and I'm not downgrading your business at all, Brian. I'm just saying it loses some of the fun. I have a lot of comics. I have some new X-Men. I was very lucky enough to run into a convention with Chris Claremont, John Byrne, and Terry Austin, all three of the creators of that incredible run of New X-Men. I had all three of them sign the front page of like the whole, 108.
Back in the day, that's where everything got signed. Yeah, everything was signed on the first page. So
I would one of those slabbed. I don't want them slabbed because I can't open it up and go, holy shit, John Byrne and Claremont and Austin signed these. Yeah. I did sell a couple a few years back because I needed some money, so I got a pretty good price for them. But that's the kind of stuff I kind of want to look at.
That's a personal decision, right? If you need that signature verified in order for you to get top dollar for that book when you go to sell it, we're happy to do that for you. On the flip side, if you're of the opinion that I can't see the signature and it's my personal copy, I don't want to get it encapsulated because I want to be able to open it up and see those three signatures on there, that's fine too. But like personally, me, I got this Q1 signed by Diesel and Jeff D. Jeff D did the back cover, and Diesel did a couple of illustrations on the interior. But I got them both to sign the front cover because when I pulled it up, that's what you're going to see once it's encapsulated.
And the great Roslov actually did that cover, which is Roslov was so. I think I don't know if I showed this in the show before, but when Roslov was still living before Jim died, my D&D group, they ran through the original GDQ 1 through 7. They did the whole thing, Giant Series, Underdark, and they did Q1 back from like 78 through about 84. And so I had Jim do a cover of that cover, except he put my players' characters as the characters fighting the hold up that cover again.
That's awesome.
Hold up the cover, Brian, so they can so see whether the characters are fighting the spider. So I had 4 main players, and I had them each. I took their major character and I described it. He wanted to know what they were wearing, what their armor was, what their weapons were, and everything. And I described it all to him, and he drew it on there. I've got it downstairs. I'll show it someday. Yeah. It's an incredible.
You can see where I got it signed. They both were respectful of Roslov's art, right? They just signed it at the bottom in the margin.
Unlike when Stan Lee used to sign something, he would just all over the cover.
Yeah. And oh my God. Actually, double check with Diesel because he was at the show how he wanted to be credited. And he wanted to be credited as Diesel.
Diesel, yeah, that's his big deal. But anyway, so I have a beautiful sketch of the cover with all their characters their main characters as the characters fight the spider. It's really, and by the way, I saw that too because of all these artists, I don't know one single artist that doesn't do personal commissions. It may cost you a bit, but all these guys are still living. Jeff Easley, Jeff D, Darling, they will all do personal commissions. Throw those guys a few bucks, man, because they they're just kind of, that's that. Then a lot of them don't have big gigs outside of working at TSR or working in games. And they don't have, a lot of them don't have big retirement. They don't have health funds, this and that. And these guys are pretty reasonable. They've gone up a little bit in the few years, as probably they should. But
Inflation,
I know somebody that got a Jeff Easley just a few years ago for $700, which I think he's gone way up in his prices now, because that's insane that Jeff Easley.
As a collector of original art, that hurts my heart.
Well, a lot of these guys,
someone else got an Easley for $700, and I don't have one.
Brian and I talked about this a little bit, earlier, is that I think the time is fast approaching when, like comic book creatives, these guys are going to start charging for their signature. Because if you go to a comic book convention now, every one of these guys charges for their sig. They charge, anywhere from, $5, $25, $50. It just depends on who they are. They all charge for their signature. And for when I was a kid, went to comic book conventions, nobody charged. I got George Perez. All the big guys back in the day, Walt Simonson, Frank Miller, all these guys signed my books. None of them charged me a cent. But that's changed now. You go to comic book conventions now, they all charge. And right now, if you go to RPG conventions, none of these guys charge you. None of them charge you to sign anything, but I think that's going to change. That's going to start changing.
That was one of the things we talked about if we were managed to figure out the details with CBCS setting up at North Texas, is that obviously it's up to the artist if they want to charge, but we would encourage them to charge if someone's getting a witness signature for encapsulation, because that person is going to be adding incredible value to their item. And there's no reason why the person adding that value to it shouldn't get a little cheese.
These are not rich. These are not rich human beings. None of them are. Darlene is definitely not. I know these guys are. You know what? I am not going to begrudge them any money they make on this hobby, because
Darlene is one of the sweetest humans I've ever met.
She is absolutely a sweetheart, and she needs the money too. And so, a lot of these guys are the same way. Jeff D is not banking $1 million right now. Even Easley, as successful as Easley is, he's not super. These guys aren't super wealthy. Yes, you have the Larry Elmores who are, he's Larry Elmore. He's making big money. I think Jeff Easley should be making what Elmore's making, because Easley's stuff is just amazing. And the problem with Easley is he's so nice that for years he downgraded. Lloyd Metcalf told me once that Jeff Easley is hated among the artist community. He's absolutely detested. The reason being is he won't charge what his art's worth. He just $500, $400, whatever. He will not charge what his art is worth. But I noticed he has gone up in his prices. So these guys are starting to get a little wise to that. But yeah, if we had something like that, we would definitely probably ask that you donate a little money, whether it be 5, 10, 15, whatever amount of money to the artist, because these guys are not rich. None of these guys are rich. Very few. You have Clyde Caldwell, who makes a lot of money, Larry Elmore, Boris. Those guys, the big guys made a lot of money. I don't even think Braum makes that much money. I know Braum does a lot of outside stuff now, but I'm not sure if he's in the, making a, 6 figures.
I don't know if he's making 6 figures, but I bought a painting from Braum a few years ago, and I certainly have no idea what his personal income status is, but I get the impression he's doing okay.
He's probably doing fine, yeah. But these guys, they don't, for the most part, they don't have insurance. They don't have
right.
A lot of them don't have retirement. They don't, they did regular jobs. Now a few of them went on to, you have your Janelle Jaquays, who went on to work in the computer industry, and she eventually made quite a bit of money. But a lot of them didn't. That they just trolled along and did the same thing all these years. So I don't begrudge them any money if they want to charge that. The same with the comic book writer. The comic book artists. Comic book artists got screwed for decades. Look at Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko, all these guys. They got absolutely screwed. They weren't even allowed the original artwork back until they got shamed into it. In the late 70s, early 80s. They finally got shamed.
Late 70s. Neil Adams led that charge. Thanks, Neil.
And even then, companies like Marvel and DC shortchanged them, and then they slow walked it. They slow walked their art coming back to where Jack Kirby's widow was still getting art back even after Jack had passed. That's how slow walked.
Well, and there is a ton of stuff that was missing from the Marvel warehouse.
A lot. That's what I'm saying. They got
big key covers that were missing, likely stolen.
And I saw Chuck Dixon, who's one of the good guys in comics, talk about it once. He said that it was a accepted practice at the time to walk in the art room and steal stuff and just take something.
Oh,
Like oh, hey, I really love this page that Sal Buscema did, and I'm going to take this, and they just took it home, and then you never saw it again. Nobody said anything about it. So.
Yeah, somebody who stole something must have had a reckoning of conscience, because they donated the entire Amazing Fantasy 15 original art to the Library of Congress.
I saw that, and somebody had to have walked out with that years ago. That's crazy. Yeah. It was anonymous, right? Anonymous donation.
Anonymous.
Yeah.
I don't want to cast any aspersions, but I have a pretty good idea.
But yeah, that did happen, and apparently Jim Shooter, one of the reasons he was disliked so much at Marvel was he put a stop to that practice, because apparently people would just walk in, and especially, and like I said, don't want to cast aspersions, but a lot of them were the writers. The writers were like, well, I wrote this, and so I want the title page to whatever, and so I'm going to take it home. And Jim Shooter put a lock on that and said, nope, you can't walk out with any of the art that stays here. It wasn't supposed to go to these guys anyway. It's supposed to be a historical record. And like you said, Brian, a lot of that just disappeared. So the same thing. So segueing into this topic, a lot of that happened to TSR art. Jeff D very famously a few years ago did Kickstarters where he redrew all his original artwork because it had all been destroyed by TSR. Been thrown in dumpsters. Though he had no original art from his time at TSR, and so he redid all the art for the DD's Demigods, for the models he did, which is really very cool. That was very cool, and I think it did made a pretty good chunk of change there. But yeah, a lot of that TSR stuff.
Anybody watching Talking Craig wants to talk to me about selling an original Willingham piece, let me know.
Bill Willingham, whose stock has gone way up. Because he did Fables, obviously, huge comic. But yeah, he didn't do a lot. I remember he did a lot of the art in Rapid Strike, which is a top secret module. He did some stuff here and there. Another guy that made a comic reader did a lot was Truman. Tim Truman. Tim Truman stuff is he's. And by the way, Tim Truman, super nice guy. We have talked to him over the years about coming to North Texas. We have never been able to get him. I would love to have Tim there because
that'd be great.
His comic book Scout is one of my favorite all-time independent comics.
He's the one who redrew. He redrew all the art for X2, right? And he did that. He did the cover for the.
He did YouTube. No, he did YouTube. I'm sorry. No, he did YouTube Danger at Dunwich. He did all the.
Okay.
Yeah. And he did some other stuff too. He did some, I believe X4 and X5. He did some interior art. Nice guy, really nice guy.
I don't want to misspeak here. I feel like he did one of the RPGA modules too.
He may have. I don't. Yes, I think he did RPGA 3 or 4. I can't remember.
Yeah, I think it's 3.
If you're looking for good comic reading and you're not try to find a Scout collection, which is probably hard, but he did some great Jonah Hex miniseries.
Oh yeah.
Just incredible. Man, the Jonah Hex dude, that stuff should be made into a movie. The Jonah Hex miniseries he did were just they are hardcore. The reason I have such a soft spot
for Willingham is because as a comic reader, he drew all those ads for D&D that were in the comics.
He did, yes. He did all the ads, all the little comic-y ads. And like I said, he's made a big name out of himself the last couple of decades with DC Comics. And also, it's like anything else. The rarest stuff ends up being, or the most collectible stuff ends up being the rarest, right? And these are guys that didn't do a lot of artwork for TSR. They did a very tiny part. Guys like Tim Truman and Bill Willingham did a very, just only did a few bits of it. And so, their stuff is very, very, very sought after because it's just hard to find. Where's that dude Errol Otis? His dang artwork's everywhere. So who cares about him, right? So, no, the art Otis did some great covers. He did some.
Errol did a couple of Magic cards when they did the Forgotten Realms set. They did some throwback type cards, and I got one of those artists produced a little sketch on it. So I was really excited.
Oh, nice. And we'd love to. So we're going to try to get Errol back again this year. We have not had him since post. We haven't had Easley since post-COVID too. So Easley has told us he will definitely be back this year, and then hopefully we can get Errol back. But if nothing else, we'll have Jeff Easley back. We should have Jeff D back. We'll have Darlene. So Anything you have by them you want. Now, Darlene she did the cover of Dragon Magazine 33, and then she did the cover of B1, the brown cover version. I don't think she did any other cover stuff. She did some interior stuff here and there. And obviously, she did the map in the World of Greyhawk.
Most famously. She has a couple of illustrations in the Rogues Gallery, the first edition Rogues Gallery.
So, but any of that stuff to get signed.
And Diesel. So that was one of the books I got triple signed at the show, actually.
So nice. we're gonna think about doing some kind of a signing thing. What do you call it? We're gonna do a registered, not registered.
Dedicated signing time.
Yeah, dedicated signing thing. We're gonna try to work on something like that. And we may have writers do it too. It may not just be
absolutely like anybody who's a guest of the show who's worked there.
Yeah.
Like
Alan
I got Zeb to sign like 20 things for me at the show. So.
Oh yeah, Zeb is there. Zeb wrote so much stuff, and so did Alan. Alan Hammock obviously wrote C2, and he wrote some other stuff. So I think that's a great idea. Like I said, if it could put money in these guys' pockets too, I think it'd be even better. So we're going to see about doing something like that. I haven't talked about it with Gary yet, but we're going to try to put something like that together. So
for sure.
Cool.
Any other issues that you had questions about, Eric, or anybody else on here? I mean, I could talk about this all night long.
I didn't have issues
all night long.
I mean, I find it very interesting, and I'll be honest with you, I'm trying to think of things in my collection that are slab worthy that I want to display. Not looking to sell them, stuff that I'd want to display.
Sure.
And of course, if you've been playing since 1980, you've probably got a huge collection. Some of it may actually be in good condition because it probably was never used. Stuff that was used.
I mean, this is not a super awesome grade, 6.5. It's my only copy. This will probably be a display copy for me. I'll probably put I'll put this on my shelf or something, or on my wall where I can look at it. So I have some items like that are just like, you know what? It's cool that I got this done. I put a Japanese item up on eBay today because I had one signed by Merle. It was only a 7.0. I wasn't in love with it, so I stuck it on eBay for what I thought was a decent price. But a lot of that stuff's going to go on my wall or going to go on my display case because that's why I get it, because I don't have. I've got like 2 of these. I don't have a bunch of Dragon. I'm not Bill Meinhardt, so I may get the other one eventually done. I don't think it's as good a condition as this, and probably the lesser condition one will end up being sold.
Mike, I would say any copy. I mean, me personally, any copy of Dragon 1 that I have, I'm getting slabbed because it's a magazine and the chances of it getting further damaged.
It's a key also, and they talk about keys with comics. There's certain key issues. First Wolverine, first whatever. You got to look at gaming with the thought of keys, and a key is a Dragon magazine number 1. It's a key issue. It's the first Dragon. It's a publication that ran for 20 years. I even think that stuff like Dungeon Magazine 1's a key. I got my Dungeon Magazine 1 slab. I think S1 might end up being a key. That was the very first module that TSR put out. It's not super rare. There's a lot of editions of it. There's a lot of them out there. Finding a super nice one will be hard. But I think that's a nice key is to have an S1 in there.
Finding a super nice first print is going to be hard.
Any of the RPGA or R module series are keys because those were only available if you joined the Role Playing Game Association, and they were never available on the shelf. Retailers never sold those; they were only available through mail order, and so that's why they're so hard to find out. So our hobby has keys also. I'll probably get that slabbed even if it isn't great condition because there's just so few of them, and like you said, Brian, you don't want to handle it or do like me, fat finger it and drop it on the ground, or you don't want to hear the story about I can't even tell it. I get sick to my stomach. So about the Amazing Spider-Man 129 first Punisher I had that I put back in the case, and I noticed when I did there was a piece of it missing on the cover, and I looked on my tape and it was on my tape.
Oh.
Now this is back when the book was probably only worth a few $100s. It wasn't worth something massive now, but I was so angry I sold it to the next show I went to. The next show I went to, I slapped the price on it and sold it because I was so angry. I could not stand to look at it.
You didn't want to keep looking at it.
It was a tiny little square. It was tiny. I couldn't stand to look at it. I was so angry. So this prevents this from dumbass me from getting taped now on anything and tearing it up or dropping it or creasing it or bending it the wrong way. So
Yeah.
I also was at a comic book convention. I saw a guy bend a Tales of Suspense 39 first Iron Man. Was that first Iron Man? Yep. I saw him bend it to get it into a Mylar, and everybody around him went, gasped. And he goes, "What? I'm just trying to get it in the Mylar, man." He's like doing this, and people are like, "Oh," people are, heart attack. There's guys that are having to revive them, and that's a Tales of Suspense 39, So yeah, that prevents any of this. Let the professionals deal with it. Let them put it in the slab and take care of it. Just bring and it was just so nice picking these up and just seeing how, like I said, how nice they looked and how shiny and just the care that you guys use. Like I said, I just looked at these, just think, like, this is so cool. I wish I'd done this years ago, because now I should have done the first 10 issues of Dragon. I could have had the first 10 or something, slab. I'm going to try to get the first 5.
It looks really nice. It's
very nice.
You can't deny that.
I'll probably bring some.
It's very hard
to game home.
Yeah, it's hard to see, through the computer screen, but the slabs themselves are extremely sturdy.
Yeah, they're extremely sturdy, and I will probably try to bring a few to game hole just to show people. But definitely next year at the con, I will have some available so people can look at. I'll bring some that put it behind the. We're going to set it up behind the counter where they'll be safe, and I'll bring some there just so people can look at them, because it's just cool to show the hobby that, because you don't want to get out your Dragon 1 and have people paw through it or pull it out or whatever. But this way you can just show people, look, there's a Dragon 1. Like, wow, it looks so cool.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Oh, Mike's getting sleepy.
COVID. No, I'm just kidding.
What? You didn't test positive again, did you?
Had terrible allergies. It's still, Brian can tell you, it's still 95 freaking degrees here in Texas, and my allergies are going nuts the past 2 weeks, because it's just ridiculous. It's so dusty and hot and dirt. It's just insane. It will not get
really,
cool here.
Should I tell you?
So Eric, what do you got
right now?
Yeah, go ahead and tell me. Just rub it in. Tell us.
Making me jealous.
Okay, hold on. 52 degrees here in Holy.
Well,
it's going down to 43 tonight. So it's still kind of balmy.
I hate you so hard right now.
Hey, Eric, can you hear this? Because if you can, I'll just turn it up for you. There we go.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, we're still waiting. I have a feeling so game holes in 3 weeks. I told my wife, I'm 3 weeks. 3 weeks will be in Wisconsin, and it's got to be cool in Wisconsin here, right?
Oh yeah, I'm sure it is.
Especially in 3 weeks, it's got to be, because this has been ridiculous this year. So, that's so. I'm gonna bring. I've been bringing stuff every time I go pick up my stuff. That's so I do. You do save money if you drop it off there. Understandable. Most people are not in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. You're gonna have to mail it in. So this one thing we didn't talk about. So I'm mailing in some valuable stuff. What is the best method for me to mail it to you to make sure it gets there? And like you said, the United States Postal Service is much better now, the delivery. But how should I handle this exactly? What would you do?
So there's lots of YouTube videos on how to package comic books to send in for grading. But essentially, you want everything to be in a bag and a board. You want them tight together. Typically with cardboard on the front and the back, and tape around them to hold them tight so that they don't do this number. And then whatever box you ship it in, it should basically be enough packaging material in the box that the books don't move around in the box. And that includes up and down. A lot of people get the left and the right thing, but they don't put enough stuff on top of it. So if the box gets turned on its side, it's going to slam back and forth that way. So just make sure that you got padding on all 6 sides of the cube. Whatever box that you're mailing it in, and that the books are protected front and back, and that they're taped tightly together in bags of boards.
What about should I even bother with something like signature? I don't need signature confirmation. It's going to your office, so they're picking up there. So,
yeah,
but what about insurance?
But yeah, there's no reason to spend that extra money.
What about insurance, though? I should definitely insure these things, right?
Again, I'm not going to tell you what to do with your stuff, but if it was my stuff, I would get it insured.
Well, okay, let's say I'm Joe Schmo and I'm sending in Dragon 1 through 5. Probably should insure that, right? I mean,
I mean, depending on, like, if you think if your Dragon 1 is a 7 or 7-ish, 2 through 5 are the same condition. I mean, I'm going to insure that box for probably $4,000.
Yeah, I think that they used to, you could only insure for, I want to say 1,000, but they recently raised the rates of insurance, which is good. And I'm going to throw something else in there too. This is just for me professionally shipping for the last 30 years. The longer something is in the mail system, the more chance it can get damaged. That's why I mail almost everything I do, either priority mail or even faster, example, FedEx or something like that, because if you go cheap on that, don't be surprised when something bad happens, because the longer it's in the system and the less able they're tracking it. For instance, media mail is notoriously difficult to track. It's also
don't
treated
send
very
anything to us, media mail, please.
No. They throw those boxes around. They crush. I've had stuff get media mail that's been crushed flat. Send it priority mail or send it air mail. Just whatever the fastest you can get it there. Send it the fastest you can get it. The less time in the system, better.
I will say, as someone who ships things occasionally, I stumbled across a service called Pirate Ship.
Pirate Ship's really good. They do a good job, yeah.
And you can get some pretty significant discounts on heavy boxes, especially through UPS. They have like crazy low rates on big UPS boxes. So something to consider.
I have some bad UPS stories too, so I can't talk about UPS.
I mean, every shipping company has its nightmare stories.
Yeah,
right?
that's true. That's true. I've had I want to tell you, I've been shipping United States Postal Service since 1994, and I can literally count on two hands the amount of packages lost or damaged. It just it doesn't happen very often, and a lot of it has to do obviously with your personal post office that you're at, and I have a really good one. But for the most part, if you're having a lot of problems, it's probably your post office that's causing the issues. So it just rarely happens. And usually when somebody says they haven't got anything, I said just wait a couple extra weeks. I've had stuff arrive 6 months late. I mean, arrived to other people. It just happens.
I shipped some stuff to Italy, and the guy was.
Italy's terrible. Italy's terrible.
It took a year and a month for it to come back to me.
But that was my longest shipment. It took over 6 months to Italy. And Italy and Greece are notorious for having really horrible postal service. As a matter of fact, for a long time, does it now, would not insure anything to Greece. That's how bad it was, because the way Greece is the country's run, it's a patronage system, which means not the best person gets the job. It's the person whose brother's cousin always wanted to work at the post office, and he gets the job, and he may decide that he likes to steal stuff because, so it's just Greece is really tricky to ship stuff to. But United States, we usually don't have those problems. Like I said, I rarely ever have issues, which is why I freaked out about 10 years ago when I mailed some stuff to CDC that didn't get there. Because I'm thinking, of course, the one package I really want to get somewhere is not getting there. But like I said, that was a long time ago. I'll tell you, this actually works to the advantage too. Less people mail stuff nowadays, which means it's actually, I think it gets there a lot faster. There's less crap in the mail. And so,
junk mail and packages.
Yeah. So I will reservations about mailing anything now to you guys if I had to. But it's better. It's nicer to drive it over there because then I can just hand it to you and hand it off. And then you could also point out stuff and be like, hey, did you notice this crease on the back cover here? Like, oh, I did not. That's not, that's not good.
Oopsie.
So sounds like we're going to wrap up. Just want to reiterate a few things. CBCScomics.com. You'll have to have an account to make a submission. That's obviously free to set up the account. Once you have an account, just hit submit. Go to magazine. Type in the name of your book as best as you can. If it's not exact, don't worry. I'll fix it when it gets to the office. Just make sure I can recognize what it is. You don't have to get the publishing year correct or anything like that. Just do your best. And like I said, we'll fix it before we encapsulate it. Mail us your stuff. We'll get it graded, encapsulated, and sent off to you. Pressing is available. Press screen is available. Raw grade is available. It's $25 a book, plus the pressing if you want it, and plus shipping and tax, of course.
And I would say that my personal opinion on this, most stuff that's not shrinked, pressing is going to help it look better. And in this industry, if you can go from a 6.5 to a 7 or an 8.5 to a 9, that's a huge jump. And that will now, if you just don't care, you don't care. If you're never going to sell it, whatever. But if you're going to sell it or you think you want it to look nicer, I would definitely get everything you could pressed. I just think it makes.
We typically can't take a 3 to a 5, but a lot of times we can take a 5 to a 6, if that makes sense.
And that's pretty, and that's a huge jump because, as we said before, it's going to be really hard to find books in 9.0 or better condition. So if you can, Ingo recently had an auction of a lot of CBCS stuff on there. I guess you saw that, Brian. And I thought the results were interesting. I thought most stuff went for over what it normally would if it wasn't slabbed. A couple items went, I thought, under. I thought the RPGA went. I thought it should have been for more, but a lot.
I was the underbidder on that book, by the way.
Well,
I wanted to bid more. I think it was incredibly undervalued, and somebody got a really smoking deal on that.
It was a low grade, which is a 6.0, but it was an RPGA module, and those typically go anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500.
Yeah.
And this went for what, $700?
Something around that, yeah. And I can't. I've been thinking about why that happened, and I think some of the largest detractors to encapsulation are also that same pool of buyers who would be interested in buying that book.
Absolutely. And I think that's going to be interesting dynamic as time goes on too, because I think you're going to see a lot. Like you might see a really, really beautiful X2 that's a 9 whatever go more than something you thought would go like an R1. You're thinking, wait a second, R1's way rare, but as you said, a lot of the people that are opposed to slabbing are the people who are buying the more valuable stuff. So it's a really weird dichotomy that's going to go on there for, I think, a few years probably. I mean, there
will be a tipping point. I mean, this is what happened in comics, right? CGC came out and they were in business for about a year, and their books were typically selling for about 1.5 times guide if it was in high grade, sometimes double if you had like a 9.6 or a 9.8. And then Sotheby's had a big auction where they had a bunch of premium stuff in high grade, and the prices went bonkers, where stuff was selling for 10 and 20 times guide, and that was it. That set the precedent for everything to come in the future. So we'll have the same thing. We'll see for a while. Things are just going to be steady, and things in higher grade are going to sell for a premium, and then we're going to start seeing some really big results on high grade items, and then the floodgates are going to open.
What happened with the comics too is that you had a lot of people that collected comics their whole life that didn't want to buy slab stuff. And the Sotheby's auction was really interesting because you had a lot of people that didn't normally do comics. They saw this stuff was slabbed and like, yeah, why wouldn't I want a slabbed comic? I don't know how to grade stuff. I don't know what the grade is. Right. And after that, that's when the dealers and everybody started saying, oh, wait a second.
Right.
Yeah.
Harley Yee is a big comic dealer, and he basically ran home after the auction to reprice all of his books.
to price them up, or
yeah. I mean, we can talk briefly about the Comic Link auction that was a couple of months ago. I mean, that was really with the results on that, right?
And that got really interesting because that was the first auction I saw with CGC or actually slabbed and graded books in it, which I thought was really interesting.
I don't think there were any graded items in the Comic Link.
Well, I thought there were. Okay, maybe not then.
But
I'm thinking of this year's Gen Con. Never mind.
Yeah. So the Comic Link auction had some just absolutely ridiculous prices. Like the 25th anniversary Against the Giants book sold for $150.
Right.
You can buy 10 copies on eBay right now for $50. Sure. Right. Like some of those prices didn't make any sense.
No.
And I think what it was you had the comic guys who go to Comic Link to buy their comics and their art. And they see this RPG auction. They're like, oh, I used to play D&D. Oh yeah, that's cool. Oh, Against the Giants. I remember Against the Giants. And so they really raised the prices on a lot of that mid-tier material. I mean, there was like an A4 that sold for $130. And this is not something that was like a near mint copy, right? And Comic Link didn't do a good job with the pictures. They had one picture of the front cover of everything, no picture of the back cover. But they still achieved these incredible results on all the mid-tier stuff. Some of the higher end items, they had an Up the Garden Path and I think an R1 that people thought maybe went a little bit undervalued.
Definitely, yeah.
But the mid and low tier stuff just was bananas price wise. And I really feel like, and I talked to the Comic Link guys after that auction, and they said they were going to try and have another fall auction, probably in October, but they're going to have to get the consignments for it, right? So if they don't get any consignments they won't have it. But I think when they have their next auction and there are graded items in there, like the Comic Guide, that crossover, those guys are used to buying slab books, right?
Yes.
So they're going to go and they go, oh, this is a 9. Okay, great. And you're going to see some. Like, I can't predict the future, but I really feel like we're going to see some significant prices when that happens.
I would have done this if I didn't think this is going to be something that's going to be pretty accepted the next decade or so. And I know somebody had said this. I don't know how I feel about it, but somebody, I think on the Facebook discussion we had, said that in 10 years you will not buy a key book without it being graded. You just won't. That sale won't happen. You will not have an ST1, an RPGA, 4, or whatever the hottest things are. You won't buy it unless it's graded, because nobody is going to trust the value of something that's going to become extremely collectible unless it's been graded, at least graded, maybe not slab, right, but graded by professionals.
And I think that there's some truth to that, especially if we're talking about online sales, right?
Yes.
Because you take out all the question marks for a high-end item when you're selling something. If you're selling up the garden path, you want to confirm its authenticity, and you want to have a third-party independent grade on that thing, so that there's no question that the buyer and the seller are going to come to a value on that item, right? But on the same token, there are lots of people still buying raw key comics all the time, especially in person at shows. If you feel like you have the personal expertise to go in there and make a good purchase, especially if you can, hold it and feel it and touch it and look at it, then by all means, and that will still happen. Like you said, Mike, every single copy of RPGA 1 is not going to ever get encapsulated. It's not going to happen. But I do feel like, to that poster's point, that online sales for significant items, it'll be very rare for something to pass hands ungraded. And if it comes from Bill,
it makes good sense.
From Bill, and he's very trusted. Not that he sells stuff, but this is Bill selling it. People are going to trust his grade, and they're going to buy it, and that's fine. Like, our service is not for Bill, and that's okay. Would I love to slap some stuff for Bill? Absolutely, right? But it's okay.
You're never going to slap anything for Bill. Don't worry about it.
Maybe
Getty, but no, Bill is not going to. So, but the whole thing is that, like you said, that just means that every copy is not going to. So people that are so scared that, oh my gosh, we're gonna have a future dystopian post-apocalyptic society where everything's going to be in slab, it's just not going to happen. People don't understand the print runs, how big they were of some of this stuff. And that's why every time I buy a collection, there's always a dog-eared copy of S1, T1, B1, B2. I mean, they just were printed. Everybody got a copy, but not every copy's pristine enough to go, man, that really just needs to be in a slab. And I'm not going to mention names, but go on eBay right now and go to role-playing games, put in keywords, and you'll find some really low-quality stuff that's been slabbed. And I look at it, I'm like, why? Why are you getting a 5.0 whatever? It's like, well, why did you get, D2, it's a 4? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. Why would you, but and then they want $800 for them. Like, nah, so that stuff's, the market's going to even out. The market's going to take this place out of the market. It's going to take them out of the marketplace where, you have a 5.0. That's what we call average condition. You have an average condition module in the slab. I mean, God bless you, put it in the slab, but it's a very average condition. I think I'll go elsewhere to buy my, slab stuff.
And if CGC graded, hopefully it's complete.
That's the other thing too, is you got to make sure that the guys knew what they were doing. But I don't see the doom and gloom. A lot of people say, I said, look, I'm like, look, it's your collection, it's your stuff, do whatever you want to with it. The market's going to play out. If the market doesn't like this, then I'll be sitting here with a bunch of slab stuff that I can look at myself and I'll love it and I'll stare at it. It should never be worth less than it would normally be worth. But I mean, this this RPGA 4, these sell for $1,500 or so. This is a 9.0. I would.
That's the Tim Truman one, by the way. I recognize the art.
That's it. That's the Truman art. That I mean, it should go for. It's always going to go for about $1,500. I don't care if it's slab or not. Now, I suspect at some point the 9.0 is going to get people to say, "Whoa, it's a really beautiful, RPGA 3." But if they don't want to buy it, fine. I'll just keep it. I mean, I wouldn't go into this thinking you're going to make a ton of money and you're going to fleece the rubes because I'm going to get all my nice stuff slabbed and then throw it up on eBay for $2,000 a piece. It just doesn't work like that. The market, clears all that shit out.
You can certainly amplify your earnings if you're a seller, if you're good at picking out your nicer stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Like we haven't seen it yet, but when some 9.6 and 9.8 stuff starts hitting the market, you're going to see big prices, man.
So this is from Gen Con this year, Brian, and I think I can't remember if I told this to Eric or not, but this is the Bill Meinhardt's posted this. So Dragon 1 was slabbed as a 6.0, went for $2,000. R1 slabbed as an 8.0 went for $2,100. R2 slabbed as a 7.0 went for $1,000. R3 slabbed as an 8.0 went for $2,000. That's a pretty good. I think that's a little. So like I said, the R series is not quite the RPGA series. Those go for about 800 to 1,000 on a good day. If they're okay, they might go for more. Those are pretty good prices. The Dragon 1 that's a 6.0 for 2,000. That's a pretty good price because Dragon 6.0 is just barely above an average shaped Dragon, Dragon magazine. So people, they weren't. People bid on them, so they were bid on, and I think they went for over. All those that I just mentioned went for over what their normal price was. They didn't go for a lot over, but then again, they were only in the 6.0 to 8.0 range. You got to imagine.
And I really think the place where we're going to see the big prices is probably going to be somewhere like Comic Link, where you have those crossover buyers, where you get that audience who's used to buying slabs.
Right. So if you have let's say you had an R1 that's a 9.2, that's when you might be okay. So the R1 that was an 8.0 went for $2,100. If you have a 9.2 near mint, you got to look at the market. The market's being set there. That I think that's a $5,000 book, and so or more. I mean, I don't know, but that's not the only reason to do this. That's all. It's just.
And as we get more copies of things graded, then you'll be able to look and see, like the highest one ever graded anywhere is a 9. So I should be okay with this 8.0 copy.
I have the highest graded ever of all time.
Right.
Warriors
You sure do, Mike.
So matter of fact, I've got a lot of
technicalities.
Okay, look, this is probably going to be your highest Dragon 2 for a while. This 9.0. Okay, right. I'm sorry. That is near mint. Come on. Did somebody drop off something better near mint?
One, but I don't remember what his grade was. To be honest with you.
Ingo stuff's probably nicer than mine.
I think his Dragon 1 was a 8.5 or.
It was close. Mine was a 7.5. His was close. It was. He didn't have any. I had 3 times. I don't think he had any 9.0s. Did he? I can't remember. I don't think he did.
He had 192, but it was the raw grade of the X Solo 1.
That was for a friend of his. Yeah, that was.
And the actually that one was a 9, I believe. But his X11 that was signed was a 9.2 raw grade.
That was the one for his friend. Yeah, the other one was the one, but he couldn't put the pen in there. So
that one was a really interesting book to grade, and we had talked about even before we saw that book what we were going to do with that book if it came in, because we weren't going to be able to encapsulate it. It was going to have to be a raw grade, and that book was absolutely beautiful, but because the shrink wrap was a little too tight and it has the pin, it has an S curve in it. If he took that book out of the shrink wrap and pressed it, it might be a 9.6 or a 9.8.
Now that would be the one case, Brian, where you might want to unshrink a book if it has that weird. And I'm going to throw something out there. You guys are going to freak out. Don't freak out too much. Calm your, slow your roll. Here's one of my copies of Orange B3, Palace of the Silver Princess, which is 2 of these sold this year for about $13,000. They were not in this good condition. This is much better condition, but I'm going to show you. It's got that shrink.
Oh yeah, I can see it on
the shrink waviness. It's got the shrink, and a lot of B3s have that issue where they just put the shrink on really tight.
Yeah,
and so The B3, I'd probably still leave in the shrink, but a lot of those modules that had that happen, I think you might be better off.
Yeah, if you look through the shrink and it doesn't have spine ticks and it doesn't have creases and the covers are nice and the corners are nice and straight, nice and sharp, it's a consideration. You have to make that decision.
And by the way, anybody wants to buy that B3, $20,000. It is for sale. It is actually for sale, $20,000.
All right, Mike just had his kitchen done. He could probably use that.
I just figure if the 2 copies I saw on eBay weren't that nice, and they went for 13. Come on, this is nicer than them.
That's 20,000 American dollars.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah.
Okay,
we're talking real money, not play money, not Canadian.
Not Canadian.
No, we're not doing the Canadian stuff. Speaking of Canadian, our favorite Canadian was on tonight. Back the Dragon Slayer Kickstarters in the last 2 hours or 2 days. Sorry, 2 days. 37,000. Let's try to get that over 40,000. That is really going to be a really cool roll set. So that's my unsolicited plug. So buy Greg's roll set if you get a chance, or go by there and check that out. So it's because we mentioned Canadian. I did the connection in my head.
Well, I'm surprised you didn't mention Dallas Cowboys. So
Where's Greg? We'll talk Dallas Cowboys. Oh no, we won't.
No,
they had a horrible loss. No, we're not going to talk Dallas Cowboys this week. No,
we lost somebody.
Did we lose Brian?
Yeah, we lost Brian.
Oh, he might have. I wonder if he had to go out because it's 9:00. It's 9:00 for.
Yeah, I know. We kept on going and going and going, folks.
I know. We didn't know if we'd get 2 hours out of it, but it was like I said, I could talk about this all day.
Hold on, here he comes.
There, he's back.
I was so mad about the Cowboys' loss, I had to walk away and discuss for a second.
I understand.
Okay.
I feel with you.
Listen,
well, this guy's a Jets fan. He's got a whole bad season ahead of him. Although it must be delicious,
my friend.
It has got to be delicious to hear the media out there every day, Eric. With this, because it was all going to be Aaron Rodgers is going to take us to the Super Bowl. It's going to be great, and every week now it's like effing.
It was a double whammy. He was also my starting quarterback on my fantasy team.
Oh
no! I was like, he lasted 4 plays. It's like, holy.
That is a beat down of the season. Sure. That is a beat. Well, the Cowboys had that happen last year. We're just very lucky that our backup was really good. Rush he went 4 or 5. Your backup isn't that good, Eric. He sucks.
Our backup was our old starter. We know he's not that good. So
yeah, I know. And which is weird because I really thought he was going to be a quarterback in the NFL, but Zach Wilson, you suck. Sorry, should have say it.
Well, fellas, I gotta get up at 5, so I'm probably gonna.
We don't want to keep.
We're gonna look down. We've
devolved into NFL talk.
Our bladders are probably going to be at the breaking point anyway. After this point,
we all have the old man bladder, that's for sure.
Yeah,
hey guys, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for showing up. It was fun. It was fun.
Anybody who watches this that wants to reach out, Brian T at CBCScomics.com. Hit me up. I'll be happy to talk with you via email and answer any questions that you have.
Maybe we'll have you on next year. We'll see how this goes, and we'll see how this.
Yeah, maybe we can do this again before North Texas if we end up doing the signature thing.
Yeah, sure. Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. If we do that, we'll definitely talk about it. Yes.
And folks, if you didn't get his contact information, reach out to myself or Mike. We're easy to find. We'll make sure he gets your.
Brian is on Facebook. If you're on Facebook, or what is it? CBCS.
See, we're not professionals.
CBCScomics.com is the website.
Yeah. And by the way, the website is very easy to use. It's really easy for me to check in on my orders. It has all the information on your books there. So if you want to look up anything in your book, you're not at home, you just pull up the site and click it, and it has everything about the book. So
yeah, we talked about using the QR code to get the grader notes, but if it's your book and you log into your account, you can see all of your books, and you can
very cool.
On each one to see
I love that. Yeah, I love nice. That. Again, I'm tempted when I get back to New York to go through my collection and see what is.
Give it a shot.
Acceptable.
Yeah, definitely let me know if you send some stuff in.
Find some stuff that looks good on the wall.
So I can make sure we take care of it.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate you coming on tonight.
Thank you, Brian. I would say thank you to Mike, but
yeah. Next week, do we have a definite on next week?
We have a very strong. It should happen. Tim Kask and Don Tamora with the Tower Games, because with Tower Games is releasing the early Gary Con adventures that Tim wrote. They're going to be coming out in a hardcover book, so that'll be hopefully next Wednesday. This Friday, myself, Glenn Hallstrom, and
Good old Glenn.
Saturday I'm probably back in New York, so Game with Health with my wife Rach. And other than that, folks, be safe, be well. God bless. Roll the dice, roll them well.
Critical success.
Oh, God willing.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Later.
We're out of
Later,
here.
everyone.